Chapter 37-38 was dedicated to stirring up trouble in the sky. Heishinjio found it amusing, but the people of the Nameless Sword sect were in trouble. They did not know what kind of life and death event had happened. They scrambled out of their courtyards and ran towards the square of the hidden sword peak. Even some of the disciples who were in closed-door cultivation hurriedly left their courtyards. What a joke. The sect had a life and death event. What was the point of being in closed-door cultivation? At this moment, they couldn't care less about whether they should be allowed to ride their swords or not. They could only see the sky flashing with light. Some of them were riding swords while others were riding flying demonic beasts. They were all flying towards the large square halfway up the hidden sword peak. When Master Ouyang heard the heaven-shaking drum sound, he was so frightened that the teacup in his hand immediately fell to the ground. On one hand he ordered people to activate the sect protection array, and on the other hand he asked the higher-ups of the sect what had happened. Soon the matter was found out. Master Ouyang was so angry that he almost died. What? Was it that Yun Chujio who knocked on the drum by mistake? Was she idle? She knocked on the heaven-shaking drum by mistake on the second day after entering the sect. What on earth was she trying to do? In a fit of anger, Master Ouyang directly rushed to the discipline hall with the higher-ups of the sect in an aggressive manner. At this moment, Zhuge Dong almost cried and told Heishinjio about the heaven-shaking drum. This fellow finally knew that he had caused trouble. Yes, he had caused a big trouble. Damn it, this wasn't her fault. There wasn't such a rule in the sect rules. Moreover, such an important drum, why did she have to put up a sign? She didn't even think about it. Who would come to the discipline hall to play with the drum? Come and read on our website Wuxia World site. Thanks. Zhuge Dong's intestines were filled with regret. If he had known earlier he would have stopped her just now. No, he shouldn't have let her come to pick up breakfast today. He should have left her in the backyard like an ancestor. Unfortunately, it was too late to say anything now. No one could save junior sister Yun. Her expulsion from the sect was probably a light punishment. Perhaps, before she was expelled from the sect, she would receive a heavy punishment. Those who were watching the show were also dumbfounded. Although they were just watching the show with such a big incident, the sect would not vent their anger on them later, right? After all, they had watched Yun Chujio ring the heaven-shaking drum without stopping her, allowing her to cause a big disaster. It wasn't that they didn't want to stop her, but they really didn't expect Yun Chujio to be crazy enough to ring the heaven-shaking drum. Was there something wrong with her brain? As Hall Master Zhuge, Manager Fan, and the others left a while later, they rushed to the discipline hall at this time. After hearing everyone's discussion, Manager Fan couldn't help but feel delighted. This Yun Chujio was really courting death. This time he didn't have to make a move, but she would also have to get out of the Nameless Sword sect. Hallmaster Zhuge's mind went blank. This Yun Chujio really didn't stir up any trouble on the ground, but only caused trouble in the sky. It was over. This little girl was considered crippled. She had entered the sect yesterday and was expelled from the sect today. This could be considered as setting a new record for the fastest time for the Nameless Sword sect to be expelled from the sect. Hallmaster Zhuge laughed bitterly. Even if he wanted to, he wouldn't be able to help now. Moreover, there was a high chance that their number 9 sword forging hall would be implicated. However, since they had already fallen to such a state, it didn't matter anymore. At this moment, more and more disciples who knew the truth rushed over. Because they were too rushed, some were only wearing one shoe, some were wearing their clothes inside out, and some had disheveled hair. If these people weren't worried that they were in the discipline hall, they would have rushed in front of Heishinjio and beaten her to death. Chapter 37-39 Public Enemy of the Sect. Heishinjio looked at the angry crowd with a guilty conscience. She seemed to be able to see the black resentment on everyone's heads. She was done for. This time she was really done for. She had already offended a portion of the people by scolding the swordsman yesterday. Today it seemed that she had offended all of them. How was she going to survive in the future? However, the most important thing now was how to survive in front of her. Otherwise, she wouldn't be able to talk about the future. According to the degree of public anger, she might very well be expelled from the Nameless Sword sect. At this moment, Master Ouyang walked in with the higher-ups of the sect with a gloomy expression. Their eyes were like knives as they looked at Heishinjio. Especially when they saw that Heishinjio was still holding the heaven-shaking drum in her hand, they wished that they could slap this little girl to death. When the furious disciples saw Master Ouyang and the others coming over, they shouted excitedly, "Master, we demand that Yun Chujio be severely punished. This Yun Chujio is too hateful. Yesterday she called US swordsman and today she beat the heaven-shaking drum for no reason. She is here to cause trouble." Yes. She has committed a heinous crime. She is not worthy to be a disciple of the Nameless Sword sect. She should be expelled from the sect. In the end, everyone's slogan became more uniform. Almost the entire Hidden Sword Peak resounded with one slogan: Yun Chujio, get out of the Nameless Sword sect. Hei Shinjio looked at the scene in front of her. She was quite impressed by herself. Her physique that caused trouble was really unique. Wasn't she just knocking on that broken drum a few times out of curiosity? How did she become the public enemy of the entire sect? Master Ouyang's head was buzzing. He shouldn't have coveted the non-existent secret of the southern continent and left this troublemaker behind. Now this little girl had become a hot potato that gave people a headache. Come and read on our website Wuxia World site. Thanks, the Nameless Sword sect had already offended the 9 pavilions by leaving her behind. If they were to expel her from the sect just like that, wouldn't it be futile? Moreover, the other 4 forces were suspicious. Perhaps this little girl would be snatched away by other sects as soon as she was expelled. At that time, their Nameless Sword sect would become the laughingstock of everyone. But if they didn't expel her, this little girl was too good at stirring up trouble. She had just entered the sect for 2 days, and she had already stirred up trouble. Would the sect still be able to calm down in the future? Moreover, the most important thing was that she had already aroused public anger. If they didn't expel her from the sect, these disciples would probably be dissatisfied. Just as Master Ouyang was having a headache, he heard Yun Chujio shout, "Master Ouyang, you're finally here. Something big has happened to our sect. Otherwise, I wouldn't have struck this heaven-shaking drum." Before Master Ouyang could say anything, those angry disciples shouted, "Nonsense! What nonsense? Nothing happened to our sect." "That's right, Yun Chujio, don't quibble. You were obviously the one who deliberately knocked on the sky-shaking drum to fool us. You're so hateful. Master, this Yun Chujio is full of lies. Stop talking nonsense with her and quickly expel her from the sect." If it were any other person who had encountered such a scene, their legs would have turned to jelly. It was a pity that Hei Shinjio had seen such a scene too many times. She treated these angry disciples as cabbages. If they were willing to shout, then shout. Anyway, they weren't the ones who made the final decision in the end. Sure enough, Master Ouyang waved his hand, and the crowd instantly quieted down. Yun Chujio sighed in her heart. Not long ago she was also like this in the southern continent. It was a pity that she had turned into a fleeting cloud. She really missed it. Chapter 3740, Something Big Happened. Master Ouyang saw Yun's calm expression and thought to himself, could there really be something else going on? Yun Chujio, you said that because something big happened to the sect, the heaven-shaking drum was sounded? Then tell me what exactly happened to the sect. Yun Chujio said with a serious expression, "It's a matter that concerns the life and death of our Nameless Sword sect. Otherwise, I wouldn't have sounded the heaven-shaking drum." Zhuge Dong was on the verge of tears. "Junior sister Yun, you've already caused a huge disaster, so stop spouting nonsense. And it's a matter that concerns the life and death of the Nameless Sword sect? It's not a big deal." Everyone present also felt that Yun Chujio was spouting nonsense, but Master Ouyang didn't say anything. They wanted to hear how Yun Chujio would justify this lie. Master Ouyang gave Yun Chujio a deep look. "A major matter that concerns the life and death of the Nameless Sword sect? Then tell us what it is." Yun Chujio said calmly, "Master, if someone in the sect instigates the servants to take revenge for personal grudges and mistreat fellow disciples, is this considered a major matter?" Master Ouyang frowned. What kind of major matter was this? It was nothing more than a trivial matter. Everyone curled their lips. This Yun Chujio was really deliberately mystifying. How could this be considered a big deal? Those who knew about the conflict between Yun Chujio and Manager Fan felt that it was even more laughable in their hearts. This Yun Chujio's brain was not good, right? Could it be that she thought that the little conflict between her and Manager Fan was considered a big deal? Yun Chujio slightly raised her voice and continued, "Sect Master, if someone in the sect used their authority to incite the disciples to create trouble and ruin the sect's culture, is it considered a big deal?" Master Ouyang frowned. Although this matter was more serious than what he had just said, it couldn't be considered a big deal that concerned the life and death of the sect, right? Come and read on our website Wuxia World site. Thanks, the onlookers also sneered. This Yun Chujio was simply deliberately mystifying. There was no big deal at all. At this time Yun Chujio raised her voice again, "Master, if someone has designs on the sword pool, do you think this is a big deal that concerns the life and death of the sect?" Master Ouyang's expression turned cold. "What? Someone has designs on the sword pool? Of course this is a big matter. Who dares to have designs on the sword pool? Master Ouyang was not the only one who was shocked. Almost everyone present was stunned. The sword pool could be said to be the foundation of the nameless sword sect. If someone had designs on the sword pool, it would be challenging the bottom line of the nameless sword sect. Who was so daring? Everyone looked at Yun Chujio, waiting for her to reveal the person who had designs on the sword pool. The corners of Yun Chujio's mouth curled up slightly. Sect Master, as for who has designs on the sword pool, I, little Yen Wei, have just entered the sect, so I don't know much. However, I can provide you with 2 small shrimps. If you follow the small shrimps and investigate, you will definitely catch a big fish. Master Ouyang's expression changed and he said coldly, Who are the 2 small shrimps you mentioned? Yun Chujio glanced at the crowd and said slowly and confidently, Manager Fan of the Lower Academy's canteen and Manager Tian of the sword pool. Once Yun Chujio said this, the scene was silent at first and then it exploded. Zhuge Dong almost fainted. Junior Sister Yun, although your idea is good, aren't you talking nonsense? Putting aside Manager Tian, that Manager Fan is just a manager of the Lower Academy's canteen. How could he have any designs on the sword pool? It's over. Now Junior Sister Little Nine has another crime of slandering her fellow disciples. It's simply a heinous crime. Chapter 3741, The Cornerstone of the Nameless Sword Sect. Very quickly, 2 people, sweating profusely, squeezed to the front. They were Manager Fan of the Lower House's canteen and Manager Tian of the sword pool. Sect Master, you are being wronged. This is really a disaster from the heavens. I have always been conscientious and conscientious. How did I become someone who has designs on the sword pool? The one who spoke was a thin and lean middle-aged man. It was Manager Tian of the sword pool. Manager Fan from the canteen also had an aggrieved and angry look on his face. Sect Master, this Yun Chujio is obviously taking revenge for personal vendettas. In the morning, she beat up the servants of the lower house's canteen for no reason, so I planned to come to the discipline hall to report her. She must be taking revenge on me, so she framed me. Master Ouyang frowned even more. What? This Yun Chujio even beat up the servants of the canteen this morning? She really didn't have a moment of peace. However, the most important thing now was the matter of the sword pool. Anything like beating up fellow disciples was considered a trivial matter. Master Ouyang pointed at Manager Fan and Manager Tian. Yun Chujio, do you think these 2 people are the ones who have designs on the sword pool? Yun Chujio pointed at Manager Tian. I don't know him. If he's Manager Tian of the sword pool, then it's him. Everyone, you don't even know Manager Tian, yet you dare to say that he has designs on the sword pool? Isn't your framing too insincere? Master Ouyang's face immediately darkened. Then tell me, how did they have designs on the sword pool? If there's even half a lie, then they will be severely punished. As Master Ouyang spoke, he released a faint pressure towards Yun Chujio. Unexpectedly, that little girl was fine. Come and read on our website Wuxia World site. Thanks. Just as Master Ouyang was feeling a little puzzled, he heard Yun Chujio clearly say, I am a person with a righteous conscience. Naturally, I will not malign good people. Although I have just entered the sect, I also know the importance of the sword pool to our sect. The key to maintaining the sword pool is to have enough precious swords. That is why our nameless sword sect has set up 27 sword forging halls, big and small. Master Ouyang, am I right? Master Ouyang nodded. Yun Chujio was right. The nameless sword sect had set up 9 sword forging halls in the upper, middle and lower courts, adding up to a total of 27 sword forging halls. Seeing Master Ouyang nod, Yun Chujio continued, that's why these 27 sword forging halls can be said to be the cornerstone of our nameless sword sect. Some people who want to take advantage of the sword pool have adopted a roundabout strategy. They don't dare to tamper with the sword pool directly. Instead, they have taken advantage of the sword forging hall. At this moment, everyone's thoughts were led by Yun Chujio. They all felt that there was no problem with this reasoning and agreed with Yun Chujio's statement that attacking the sword forging hall was attacking the sword pool. However, Manager Tian and Manager Fan had an ominous premonition in their hearts. They already knew what Yun Chujio wanted to say next, which was to bring the blame to them. Beads of sweat immediately appeared on their foreheads. They wanted to explain, but they didn't know how Yun Chujio would deduct the charges against them, so they had no way to explain. They could only glare at Yun Chujio and wait for her to continue. Yun Chujio's crisp voice sounded again. Manager Tian, who is in charge of distributing the forging sword ores, has given the number 9 forging sword hall unqualified ores for 5 years in a row. As a result, The number 9 Forging Sword Hall hasn't handed over enough precious swords in 1 month in the past 5 years. Based on the calculation of 20 precious swords being handed over in a month, 5 years would be 1,200 precious swords. 1,200 precious swords would be the output of 3 Forging Sword Halls in a year. In other words, Manager Tian killed 3 Forging Sword Halls effortlessly. This little shrimp is really amazing. Chapter 3742. More than 10,000 swords. Just as Manager Tian was about to defend himself, Yun Chujio looked at him with a cold smile. Don't be in a hurry to defend yourself. I haven't finished speaking yet. It's not too late for you to defend yourself after I've finished speaking. Everyone wanted to hear Yun Chujio continue, so no one spoke up to support Manager Tian. They were all waiting for Yun Chujio to continue. Yun Chujio sighed and continued, this is only the superficial data. The far-reaching impact of this matter is even more frightening. As the number 9 Forging Sword Hall had not been able to complete the mission, the other Forging Sword Halls were already confident. Since the number 9 Forging Sword Hall was at the bottom, they naturally did not feel any sense of urgency. It was normal for them to forge 3 to 5 swords less in a month. 1 sword forging hall would produce 5 swords less, and 26 sword forging halls would produce 7,800 swords in 5 years. Adding up the previous losses, it would be close to 10,000 swords. The sword pool suddenly lost 10,000 swords. How big of an impact is that? Don't you feel that these 5 years' cultivation speed isn't as fast as before? Don't you feel that it's not as easy to comprehend the sword intent as before? It's all because of the loss of 10,000 swords. People were often willing to find excuses for their own failures. Right now, their focus was not on whether Manager Tian was a spy or not. Their focus was on the loss of 10,000 swords in the sword pool. What kind of concept was 10,000 swords? The total number of swords forged by the 27 sword forging halls in a year was only over 10,000. This was equivalent to the sword forging hall not releasing any swords into the sword pool for a year. No wonder their cultivation progress was so slow. No wonder very few people had comprehended sword intent. It was all caused by Manager Tian. Come and read on our website Wuxia World site. Thanks. Everyone's anger was immediately transferred to Manager Tian. There was no doubt that this Manager Tian was a spy. Otherwise, why would he do this? Manager Tian was so frightened by everyone's angry gaze that his legs went weak and he immediately knelt on the ground. He was completely frightened. However, from the looks of it, he was guilty. That was admitting that he was a spy. Otherwise, why didn't Yun Chujio panic just now? It meant that he was not guilty. At this moment, Yun Chujio continued, Manager Tian is naturally guilty of a great crime. However, his accomplice, Manager Fan of the Lower Academy's canteen, is also not a good person. For 5 years, Manager Fan had been depriving the number 9 sword forging hall of their food. The poor hall master and senior brothers had not tasted the taste of meat for 5 years. Otherwise, senior brother Zhuge Dong would not have been so eager to eat meat buns on the road so early in the morning. Think about it, forging a sword was a physical labor. If they could not even eat meat, how could they forge a good sword? What was worse was that Manager Fan didn't allow them to get a few more meals at a time. They had to go to the canteen for meals. How much time did they have to waste on forging swords? Conservatively speaking, they should be able to forge 5 swords in a month's time to get their meals, right? In addition to the swords forged because they didn't have enough to eat, there should be at least 1,000 swords? This was nothing. This Manager Fan was very sinister. In the morning, he deliberately let everyone be false witnesses to frame the number 9 sword forging hall. There were only a few sword forging masters in the Nameless Sword sect. His motive was simply too obvious. Fortunately, everyone's eyes were bright and did not fall for his trick. Moreover, they volunteered to come to the Discipline Hall to testify for our number 9 sword forging hall. You are indeed worthy of being the disciples of the Nameless Sword sect. You are upright and upright. You know right from wrong. Chapter 3743, Aren't you afraid of being struck by lightning? Yun Chujio's words once again caused a huge uproar. Someone immediately whispered, this Yun Chujio is right. Number 9 sword forging hall always receives the worst food, and you have to go for every meal. You won't give them any more. I also saw Zhuge Dong wolfing down meat buns this morning. One look and you can tell that he hasn't eaten meat in a long time. How pitiful. That's right. Otherwise, this Yun Chujio wouldn't have beaten up that Zhang Jun this morning. Fuck, he really deserves a beating. If they didn't mistreat the number 9 sword forging hall, would I not have broken through after so long? These people had completely forgotten how they had treated Yun Chujio and the others coldly this morning. At this moment, they wished that they could quickly draw a line with Manager Fan and the others so that they could be worthy of being upright and righteous. Zhuge Dong was already dumbfounded. Emma, although junior sister Yun's words sounded like the truth, it was originally just a simple deduction of ore and food. How did it become a plot against the sword pool? Moreover, she had let him eat meat buns in the morning for the sake of showing it to others? Also, weren't those people watching them coldly in the morning? Why did they help them to blame Manager Fan now? How did junior sister Yun do it? Hall Master Zhuge was not any better in the crowd. He listened to the discussions of the crowd with his mouth agape, feeling that everything had become unreal. Manager Tian and Manager Fan naturally would not admit defeat like this. They cried out in snot and tears of injustice. Yun Chujio points at two people to shout sternly, "Wei, you are innocent? Let me ask you, did you send number 9 Forging Sword Hall a substandard or? Did you mistreat the food of number 9 Sword Forging Hall? Right and wrong have their own judgments. Are you not afraid of being struck by lightning? Come and read on our website Wuxia World site. Thanks. Boom. A thunder heavily struck on the protection of the great array above. Everyone was shocked. If the sect protecting formation was not activated, the direction of the lightning would have been in the direction of Manager Tian and Manager Fan. What did this mean? It meant that the two of them had really done something wicked. At that moment, everyone was filled with righteous indignation. They did not care about Master Ouyang and the other high-ranking officials. They threw rotten fruits and eggs at the two of them. They wished that they could kill the two scourges directly. Although they also hated Yun Chujio previously, that kind of hatred should be called hate, not hate. However, it was different for Manager Tian and Manager Fan. Yun Chujio clearly said that it was because of them that there were more than 10,000 swords missing in the sword pool. That was why they couldn't break through, that was why they didn't understand the sword intent. It was all their fault. As for whether they admitted it or not, it was no longer important. After all, the heavenly lightning was about to strike them. What else could they say? Manager Tian and Manager Fan did not dare to raise their spiritual energy shields and could only allow those things to fall on them. They would never have dreamed that things would turn out like this? How did Yun Chujio make such a ruckus and turn them into criminals of the Nameless Sword sect? The two of them looked at Elder Wan for help. They were both Elder Wan's men, and Hall Master Zhuge had followed Elder Wan's instructions to make things difficult for them. At this point in time he should at least say something, right? Unfortunately, Elder Wan did not even look at them. His expression was solemn, and it was unknown what he was thinking about. The two of them could not help but feel a little disappointed. However, when they thought about the fact that the matter had not been decided, Elder Wan would not ignore them. Moreover, they would only be abusing their power at most. They really did not have any designs on the sword pool, and they believed that the punishment would not be too severe. Chapter 3744 felt that it was awesome. Of course, not everyone present was led into the pit by He Xinjiu. Many people knew that Yun Chujio was using this as an excuse to make a scene. Manager Tian and Manager Fan had indeed treated number 9 Forging Sword Hall harshly, but the consequences were not as severe as she had said. There were even more than 10,000 swords missing? This was utter nonsense. But on the other hand, the atmosphere of the Nameless Sword sect should be rectified. After all, the Sword Forging Hall was an extremely important department of the Nameless Sword sect. Even if there were personal grudges, they should not use things like sword forging as a means of revenge. Master Ouyang was even clearer in his heart. However, he was just worried that he had no excuse to keep Yun Chujio, thus he took the opportunity to say, "I will send people to thoroughly investigate this matter. As for the punishment of Yun Chujio and the others, we will announce it again after the matter has been investigated. Everyone disperse." When everyone heard Master Ouyang's words, they all scolded Manager Tian and Manager Fan for a while before dispersing in 2s and 3s. Master Ouyang then looked at Yun Chujio and said with a complicated expression, "You should also go back first and wait for the notice." Yun Chujio nodded obediently and said mysteriously, "Master Ouyang, don't forget to fish. These two are just small shrimps." Master Ouyang frowned slightly. He originally thought that Yun Chujio's previous words about small shrimps were just to create momentum. Could it be that she was serious? Were there really spies from other forces behind these two people? After Yun Chujio finished speaking, her left hand dragged the dumbfounded Zhuge Dong and her right hand dragged the dazed Hall Master Zhuge, followed by the dizzy Zhuge Nan Zhuge 11, and Zhuge Bei as they left the discipline hall. The reason why she added the last sentence was to prevent anyone from speaking on behalf of Manager Tian and Manager Fan. Now, even if their backer wanted to plead for them, they would have to think twice because if they didn't do it right, they would be suspected of being a spy. This guy gave himself a 360-degree thumbs up with no blind spots. Come and read on our website Wuxia World site. Thanks. Initially, she thought that there was really no way to survive this time. She didn't expect that she would suddenly think of the matter of the bystanders talking about Manager Fan and Manager Tian being on good terms. With just a little bit of play, the situation had become like this. She felt that she was awesome. When she passed by the canteen, Yun Chujio swaggered in. At that moment, the canteen was preparing lunch in a hurry. Because He Xingjiu had sounded the heaven-shaking drum, they had returned to the canteen. When the canteen people saw He Xingjiu, their hearts skipped a beat. What was this wretched girl doing here? Manager Fan and Zhang Jun of the canteen had already been detained by the disciplinary hall. Therefore, when the canteen people saw Yun Chujio, they could not help but feel a little apprehensive. Although they did not know the outcome of the investigation, Manager Fan and Zhang Jun would definitely be punished. However, it seemed that this little girl who beat them up would not do anything. What the hell? Yun Chujio glanced at the crowd. Although the culprit is that Manager Fan, all of you are also involved. Tell me, if I report all of you now, will I arrest all of you as their accomplices? The people in the canteen almost fainted from anger. This Yun Chujio was really too mean. She was a naked threat. If she went to show off, even if they wouldn't be convicted, it would still be very annoying, okay? Besides, what if they were wrongly convicted? One of the chefs, who was more flexible, said carefully, Junior Sister Yun, do you have any instructions? As long as we can do it, you can tell us. Chapter 3745 had only cooked 20 dishes. Yun Chujio looked at him with admiration. You're quite perceptive. Don't worry, when I'm successful in the future, I'll definitely promote you. Well, in the future, I'll be in charge of taking the dishes from the number 9 sword forging hall. I like to sleep late and I'm also greedy. So, every 3 days you'll send a meal to the number 9 sword forging hall. It's a combination of meat, vegetables, color, fragrance and taste. Can you do that? The people from the cafeteria looked at each other. Did they dare to refuse? This guy was clearly threatening them. Moreover, the situation was still unclear. They really did not want to cause any more trouble, so they all nodded and agreed. Yun Chujio sneered in her heart. Sometimes, it was not possible to reason with them properly. It was better to use some means. After this guy threatened the people in the canteen, he brought the dumbfounded Zhuge 5 back to the number 9 sword forging hall. Yun Chujio put the steamed buns and egg custard on the stone table and said with a smile, Are you all hungry? Have breakfast. It will take a while for lunch to be delivered. Zhuge Bei gave Yun Chujio a thumbs up. Junior Sister Yun, I, Zhuge Bei, have never submitted to anyone. Today I submit to you. I didn't expect you to help us take revenge after just a few boobies. Damn it, that Tian guy has been giving us a lot of grief over the past few years. Today is really a relief. That's right, Junior Sister Yun. Although what you said is the truth, how did it change from your mouth? This time, I think that Manager Tian and Manager Fan will not end well. It's really a relief. Zhuge Nan echoed. Senior Brother Dong, Junior Sister Yun, quickly tell us what happened this morning? Zhuge 11 asked curiously. Come and read on our website Wuxia World site. Thanks. Zhuge Dong immediately told them what happened this morning. As he told them, he sighed in his heart. He originally thought that today was a monstrous disaster. He didn't expect that it would end up with such a pleasant surprise. Could it be that Junior Sister Yun deliberately knocked on the heaven-shaking drum? Was it not an accident? Just as everyone was chatting and laughing, Hall Master Zhuge slammed the stone table. Enough. It was just an opportunistic trick. Hurry up and eat, then work. Yun Chujio, you are in charge of cleaning the swords in the storeroom today. Don't go out and stir up trouble again. If you continue to act like this, you won't be so lucky every time. There will be a day when you are unlucky. Zhuge Dong and the other 3 shrunk their necks and looked at Yun Chujio with a comforting look. Then they quickly ate. Yun Chujio was still smiling on the surface, but in her heart, she was cursing. No wonder this Zhuge Zhongyuan was ostracized. He wouldn't say anything nice either. He was really a smelly and hard rock. After breakfast, Zhuge Dong and the others went to the front yard to practice their swords. He Xingjiu finished cleaning the bowls and chopsticks. Then she hummed a tune and went to the storeroom to wipe the swords. These swords were different from the swords Yun Chujio had seen in the past. He Xingjiu could not tell exactly how they were different. However, she knew that they were different from the swords in the world. If they were the same as the swords in the world, the Nameless Sword sect would not need to spend so much effort to set up the sword forging hall. They could just go to the world and buy them. Hei Xinjiu had only wiped a few swords when the staff of the canteen came to deliver the food eagerly. Junior Sister Yun, due to the lack of time, we only cooked 20 dishes and only prepared 5 main dishes. You can make do with them first. We will send them to you later tonight, the handyman who delivered the food said carefully. He was afraid of offending this great aunt. Zhuge Dong and the others were dumbfounded. Only 20 dishes? Only 5 main dishes. They usually only had steamed buns with vegetables, okay? Chapter 3746 Results. Yun Chujio was very calm. She waved her hand and said, although it's not much, it's still okay. Do it well tonight, understand? The servant answered in fear and trepidation and ran away. Zhuge Dong and the others looked at Yun Chujio in disbelief. This junior sister Yun was simply a god. She only used one morning to solve their problem of 5 years? As they had just finished their breakfast not long ago, Yun Chujio and the others did not eat lunch and continued to work. In the evening, the canteen indeed sent an even more sumptuous meal. The food was so sumptuous that their mouths were full of oil. It had been a long time since they had eaten such sumptuous food. Hall Master Zhuge's expression was a little complicated, but he did not say anything. After eating, he returned to his room. Seeing that Hall Master Zhuge had left, Zhuge Bei said with a cheeky smile, Junior Sister Yun, you can sit here. I'll help you wash the dishes. Yun Chujio was happy to be free, so she didn't stop him and allowed Zhuge Bei to flatter her. After washing the dishes, Zhuge Bei came to Yun Chujio's side and asked in a low voice, Junior Sister Yun, did you intentionally or unintentionally sound the sky-shaking drum? Yun Chujio blinked her eyes. Yes. Zhuge Bei, if he had known this would happen, he would not have washed the dishes for her. The few of them chatted and laughed. After this incident, they felt that the distance between them had become much closer. The north, south, east, and west had also sincerely accepted this new junior sister. The 5 of them chatted and laughed for a while before returning to their rooms to rest. Yun Chujio washed up briefly and lay on the bed, wondering how things would develop. She didn't think that Master Ouyang and the sect's higher-ups were muddle-headed. There was a high chance that they wouldn't completely believe her words. However, Manager Tian and Manager Fan wouldn't have a good ending. This fellow thought of the heavenly thunder that had descended today, but he still didn't understand when his jinx skill would be effective. Then this fellow thought of the pretty boy. He did not know where the pretty boy had gone or if he was in danger. They were even more miserable than Cowherd and Weaver Girl. After staying together for a few days, they would have to separate. He did not know when they would be able to stay together for a long time. Thinking of the pretty boy, this fellow thought of Guai Chao, who had prevented her and the pretty boy from having sex, and immediately scolded Guai Chao again. Guai Chao was already used to it. In any case, as long as the little girl thought of that fiend, 8 out of 10 times she would think of having sex and then scold it. It had to be said that this little girl's thoughts were too impure. Why did she always think of having sex? After 2 days, the higher-ups finally came to a conclusion. Not only did Manager Tian and Manager Fan use their power to seek revenge for their personal grudges, they also used their power for personal gain. Over the past few years, they had often used it to benefit themselves. However, the two refused to admit that they were spies. In the end, they confiscated their property, gave them 100 strokes of the cane, and were expelled from the Nameless Sword sect. Of course, after some investigation they also found some of their minions. They also dealt with them according to the size of their crimes. The sword pool quickly sent a qualified or to the number 9 forging sword hall. The north, south, east, and west were very happy. This way they would definitely be able to complete their mission this month. Yun Chujio had already expected such a result. However, she felt that it was not enough. She should at least find the miscellaneous office to repair the dilapidated number 9 sword forging hall. In fact, this guy was guilty. After all, she had broken the gate of the number 9 sword forging hall. The number 9 sword forging hall had been running for its life. Chapter 3747, Sword Hall of the Lower House. Yun Chujio was thinking of renovating the number 9 sword forging hall, or at the very least installing a new gate. Thus, she greeted Hall Master Zhuge and slowly walked out of the number 9 sword forging hall. Ever since the heaven-shaking drum incident, this fellow had hardly left the house. Therefore, after a while, this fellow realized that she seemed to have become a famous person of the Nameless Sword sect. On the way, everyone who saw her pointed at her and talked about her heroic deeds. Those who had been fooled by the guy realized that they had been tricked by him after a few days. They looked at her with dissatisfaction. Of course, He Xingjiu did not care about that. Moreover, the guy even waved his claws to greet the crowd. Those people were both annoyed and afraid of her. This guy could turn white into black with his mouth. It wouldn't do any good to offend her. It was better to stay away from her. Therefore, under the complicated gazes of the crowd, He Xingjiu went to the Miscellaneous Affairs Hall of the lower house. Manager Yu of the Miscellaneous Affairs Hall saw Yun Chujiu. He squeezed out a smile and asked her what was the matter. Manager Yu, our number 9 sword forging hall is really too dilapidated. Can you help us repair it? There's no hurry for anything else. Anyway, help us to install the gate first, Yun Chujiu said straightforwardly. Manager Yu agreed readily and promised to immediately arrange for the miscellaneous servants to come and repair it. Yun Chujiu didn't expect things to be so smooth. She thanked Manager Yu and hopped out of the Miscellaneous Affairs Hall. This fellow thought that if he went back just like that, he would definitely be detained in the backyard by Hall Master Zhuge. Therefore, he rolled his eyes and did not return to the number 9 Forging Sword Hall. Instead, he wandered aimlessly in the lower house to enjoy the scenery. When this fellow was wandering aimlessly, he heard the sound of weapons colliding. Moreover, he could see several flashes of light in the distance. This fellow immediately became spirited and hopped over. When he got close, He Xingjiu realized that the sound was coming from a large courtyard. The courtyard was surrounded by tall walls. There was a pitch-black plaque on the front door with the words Sword Hall of the Lower House written on it. He Xingjiu swaggered into the courtyard to watch the fun, but she was stopped by the handyman guarding the door. The two handymen were probably worried about He Xingjiu, so they were polite. Junior sister Yun, only outer disciples are qualified to enter the Sword Hall of the Lower House, so please go back. Yun Chujiu blinked. I'm not going in. Can I peek through the door? The two handymen, was there a difference between looking through the door and looking through the door? Junior sister Yun, please don't make things difficult for us. Please go back. Seeing that the two of them were determined, Yun Chujiu could only leave in embarrassment. However, this guy wandered behind the sword hall of the lower academy. When he saw the towering tree in the courtyard, his eyes rolled and he had an idea. This guy looked around and saw that no one was paying attention to him. He took off his spirit-concealing ring and jumped onto the wall with the tip of his toes. Using the cover of the tree branches, he looked into the courtyard. He saw that there were about 100 people in the courtyard. They were all wearing outer sect disciples' clothing and were practicing their swordsmanship with swords in their hands. A middle-aged man stood in front of the disciples. He was obviously the person who taught them swordsmanship. Yun Chujiu narrowed her eyes. When she saw the middle-aged man's aquiline nose and saw that he looked somewhat similar to Elder Wan, she thought to herself, could this person be related to Elder Wan? Chapter 3748 revealed a secret. Yun Chujiu's interest quickly shifted to the swordsmanship practiced by the outer sect disciples. She sighed in her heart. As expected of the nameless sword sect that specialized in swordsmanship. The swordsmanship. What the fuck? Yun Chujiu curled her lips in disdain. In her opinion, the swordsmanship of these outer sect disciples was flashy and unreal. It was far inferior to her chicken-slaughtering swordsmanship. However, it was not that there were no redeeming points. Occasionally, one or two moves would be used for reference. This fellow was puzzled. The moves that old man Ouyang used that day could be said to be extremely exquisite. Why were the sword techniques that these outer sect disciples learned so poor? However, this fellow quickly figured it out. After all, these were all outer sect disciples. Of course, it was impossible for them to come into contact with the core sword techniques of the sect. Otherwise, there would be no distinction between outer sect disciples and inner sect disciples. After a while, the middle-aged man coughed. Everyone stopped what they were doing and stood up respectfully. The middle-aged man glanced at everyone. Let's call it a day. Let's go. The disciples bowed. Yes, Marshal Uncle Wan. Yun Chujiu's heart skipped a beat. As expected, he was also surnamed Wan. However, she did not know what kind of person this man surnamed Wan was. The crowd left in twos and threes. However, two disciples didn't leave. Instead, they stood respectfully in front of Uncle Master Wan. Yun Chujiu narrowed her eyes. These two people looked familiar to her. It seemed that they had helped Manager Fan to perjure himself in front of the canteen. Could they be Elder Wan's people? What's that Yun Chujiu doing these few days? Uncle Master Wan asked gloomily. That stinky girl hasn't left the number 9 sword forging hall these few days. Those useless people from the canteen will deliver the food every 2 days. They practically treat that stinky girl as their ancestor. Uncle Master Wan, Do you need us to deliberately pick a fight with that stinky girl? Doesn't she have a good mouth? I don't believe that we can't handle her, one of the disciples said with a pout. Uncle Master One frowned slightly. Have you forgotten what I said? Just keep an eye on her every move and don't act rashly. The disciple who spoke replied embarrassedly. The other disciple said tentatively, Uncle Master One, that stinky girl beat up senior brother Pengcheng before and hurt manager Tian and manager Fan a few days ago. Are we going to let her off just like that? Uncle Master One snorted coldly. You don't need to worry about that. Sooner or later she will be taught a lesson. Just keep an eye on her. Also, keep an eye on the 5 people from the number 9 sword forging hall, especially that Zhuge Zhongyuan. If there's any movement, report to me immediately. Do you hear me? The 2 disciples didn't dare to say anything more and agreed respectfully. Uncle Master One took out 2 porcelain bottles and handed them to them. They were probably medicinal pills. The 2 disciples couldn't help but express their gratitude and respectfully sent Uncle Master One off. Senior Brother Luo, with this converging spirit pill, our cultivation will be twice the result with half the effort. Why don't we head to the sword pool to cultivate now? Junior Brother Yu, what you said makes sense. Let's go, we'll head to the sword pool now. The 2 of them left the sword hall of the lower house excitedly. They were probably heading to the sword pool. Yun Chujio narrowed her eyes. She did not expect that she would learn of such a piece of news out of curiosity. That elder one was really petty. Was he planning to fight to the death with her? As an elder of a sect, was he not afraid of embarrassing himself by making things difficult for a shrimp like her? Chapter 3749, Sword Pool. Yun Chujio recalled that Uncle Master One had specially instructed the 2 scumbags to keep an eye on Hall Master Zhuge and the others. She couldn't help but feel a little puzzled. Hall Master Zhuge and the others had fallen to such a state. What else did they have that was worth Uncle Master One's attention? This fellow had just arrived and didn't know much about Hall Master Zhuge and the others, so he couldn't make any judgments. However, this fellow was very curious about the sword pool that the 2 scumbags had mentioned. She also roughly knew that the people of the Nameless Sword sect liked to cultivate near the sword pool. It was said that cultivating near the sword pool not only allowed one to cultivate faster, but those who were lucky would also be able to comprehend sword intent. Thus, the sword pool was the cornerstone treasure of the Nameless Sword sect. This fellow pondered for a moment. It wasn't noon yet anyway, so it wasn't impossible for him to follow them to take a look. Therefore, this fellow quietly left the sword hall of the lower house, took out the map and rushed to the sword pool. The sword pool was located at the back of the hidden sword peak. Only then did He Xingjiu understand the origin of the hidden sword peak. It was probably related to the sword pool. He Xingjiu huffed and puffed. It was not easy for her to finally reach the back of the hidden sword peak. Just as she was about to grumble a few words in her heart, when she saw the sword pool in front of her, all her complaints were immediately swallowed back into her stomach. Oh, isn't this sword pool too spectacular? Although she had seen the ancient sword tomb before, it was actually an ancient battlefield. How could it be as shocking as the sword pool in front of her? The sword pool was over 100 acres in size and there were countless precious swords in it. What was even more amazing was that there were countless intertwined sword lights in the sword pool. It was simply a magnificent sight that could not be described with words. There was even a faint impulse to make people kneel and worship. In fact, when those disciples who came to cultivate arrived at the sword pool, they would first kneel and worship reverently before starting to cultivate. Only He Xingjiu did not fit in with the others. They were all cultivating in peace, but this fellow was munching on spirit fruits while surrounding the sword pool and clicking his tongue in wonder, as if he was out on an outing. This fellow finally understood why the Nameless Sword sect had set up so many sword forging halls. It was because she realized that as time passed, some of the sword lights in the sword pool would slowly dim, while others would simply disappear. This fellow really did not understand what the reason was, so he simply squatted by the sword pool and stared at the sword lights in a daze. Just as this fellow was in a daze, he heard someone say loudly, "Passers-by, please make way. We are about to throw our precious swords into the sword pool." Yun Chujio turned around and saw more than a dozen people walking over. They were probably from the sword pool. Although she liked to cause trouble, she still knew her limits. She stepped back obediently and watched curiously as the people from the sword pool took out countless swords from their storage rings and threw them into the sword pool. As the swords were thrown in, the sword lights in the sword pool suddenly became brighter. Yun Chujio could even vaguely feel a sense of joy. This guy could not help but twitch his lips. What the hell? How could a broken sword pool have any joy? However, this guy was soon dumbfounded. Because she realized that what she felt was not the joy of the sword pool, but the big kitchen knife. She took out the big kitchen knife in disbelief. Previously, D. Biming had said that the big kitchen knife might have self-destructed, which meant that it had fallen into a deep sleep forever. Could it be that the weapon spirit of the big kitchen knife had woken up? Yun Chujio used her divine sense to sense again, but she couldn't feel anything. It was as if everything before was just an illusion. Chapter 3750 Sword Radiance. Yun Chujio tried for a long time, but she could not feel the emotions of the big kitchen knife. She could not help but feel a little discouraged. At this time, the people in the sword pool had already put down their swords and left. This guy thought about it. It seemed that the big kitchen knife had a reaction because of the sword radiance. Why not try it closer? Perhaps it would have a reaction again. Thus, this fellow carried the large kitchen knife to the edge of the sword pool, hoping that the large kitchen knife would react. Unfortunately, nothing unusual happened. This fellow frowned. It was most likely just an accident. Forget it, it was better to return to the forging sword hall. Otherwise, Hall Master Zhuge would lose his temper again. Just as this fellow was about to leave, he was stunned to find that a sword light was rushing towards him. The speed of the sword light was extremely fast. Heishinjo did not have the time to react at all. She did not even have the time to set up her spiritual energy barrier. A thought flashed through her mind. She was doomed. Just when she thought that she was doomed, she did not expect that the sword light did not stab her. Instead, it went into the kitchen knife that she was carrying. Heishinjo was momentarily stunned. Before she could regain her senses, one sword light after another went into the kitchen knife. Another thought flashed through Heisinjia's mind. It was over. She was most likely going to cause trouble again. This fellow sneakily turned her head back and could not help but heave a sigh of relief. Everyone was seriously cultivating and no one noticed her abnormality. Moreover, the sword light in the sword pool was surrounded by the brilliance of the sword light. With her body blocking it, it was not too obvious that the kitchen knife had secretly eaten some of the sword light. The guy saw that the sword light in the sword pool quickly dimmed. He was afraid that the kitchen knife would be exposed if he continued to swallow it, so he quickly put the kitchen knife back into his storage ring and left the sword pool with a guilty conscience. The guy was afraid that the incident would be exposed. After returning to the number 9 sword forging hall, he was very nervous, but when the sky turned dark and there was no news, his little heart calmed down slightly. She took out the big kitchen knife from her storage ring and was surprised to find that the crack on the big kitchen knife had shrunk a lot. Could it be because it swallowed those sword lights? This guy's thoughts could not help but become active again. It could be said that other than Xiao Hanyo, the big kitchen knife had been with her the longest. Moreover, it had saved her from danger several times. Since there was a way to repair the big kitchen knife, she could not give up such a good opportunity. Xiao Hanyo pondered for a moment. There were so many sword lights in the sword pool anyway. It was not a big deal for the kitchen knife to swallow some. Moreover, it seemed that no one had noticed how many sword lights there were. Why not go and swallow some tomorrow? Therefore, the next day Xiao Hanyo found an excuse to leave the number 9 sword forging hall again and went to the sword pool eagerly. Seeing that everyone was concentrating on their cultivation, Yun Chujio took out the big kitchen knife and muttered, "Small dishes, if you want to eat them, hurry up. Otherwise it will be bad if people find out." Sure enough, sword light started to rush towards the big kitchen knife. Yun Chujio also felt the joy in her spiritual sense again. This guy was very excited. Oh my, after the big kitchen knife woke up, it would be the heaven-executing divine axe. When that time came, she would think of a way to find the last fragment of the great void mirror. Wouldn't she have 2 divine artifacts? The more she thought about it, the more she was happy. The consequence of being absent-minded was that by the time she regained her senses, nearly half of the sword light in the sword pool had already disappeared. This fellow's head buzzed. Chapter 3751. She had caused trouble again. It was over. It would have been fine if there was only a tiny bit missing, but now there was only half. It would be a miracle if no one found out. This fellow hurriedly put away the large kitchen knife, blinked his eyes, and then quietly blended into the crowd, pretending to cultivate. After a while, someone finally noticed the strangeness of the sword pool, and immediately went into an uproar. Oh my god! Look, why is the sword gleam in the sword pool so dim? It seems to have lost half of it. Oh my god! It's true. What's going on? Something goes wrong in the sword pool. It'll kill us. Hurry up and report to the manager of the sword pool. Yes, yes, hurry up and go. Find the reason quickly, or the remaining sword gleam will disappear, and well be done for. Hei Shinjio, who was in the crowd, was also making a ruckus, looking extremely anxious. This fellow was extremely regretful in his heart. This damn kitchen knife. You really are a slow and steady flow. You insist on eating a fatty in one bite, you really have caused her death. I only hope that it won't be traced back to her. Very soon the sword pool's manager came over. When he saw the situation of the sword pool, he sat down on the ground, trembling as he took out his identity jade token to report to the higher-ups of the sect. Not long after, Master Ouyang rushed over with the higher-ups of the sect. Everyone's expression was very grave. The sword pool was related to the life and death of the nameless sword sect, so it was naturally no small matter. When everyone saw the situation of the sword pool, although they were mentally prepared, they were still shocked to the point that their faces turned pale. How did it suddenly become like this? Master Ouyang's body slightly trembled. He gritted his teeth and said, "Investigate. We must thoroughly investigate this matter. No one who has been to the sword pool today can leave. Interrogate them one by one." Xinjia's heart sank. She knew that she would most likely not be able to escape, because she was the only one wandering around the edge of the sword pool. Moreover, it was the same yesterday and today. She would have seen a ghost if she didn't suspect it. Moreover, she was the one who had volunteered to join the nameless sword sect. If she were Master Ouyang, he would also suspect that she was a spy. This matter was much more serious than the shocking drum incident. She had to think of an excuse or a way to remedy it. Otherwise she would really be done for. Before the disaster reached her body, her brain was working rapidly. She was thinking about how to resolve this disaster and how to make up a believable excuse. The worst thing was that Yun Chujio still didn't know how the sword light in the sword pool was produced, and how the swords in the sword forging hall were different from the swords in the world. His heart skipped a beat. He quickly took out Zhuge Dong's voice transmission talisman. "Senior Brother Dong, can you explain to me what is going on in the sword pool? How are the swords forged by you different from the swords in the market? Quick, you must be quick, or else junior sister will lose my life." On the other side, Zhuge Dong, who was forging the sword, was shocked when he received Hei Xinjia's voice transmission amulet. He stole a glance at Hall Master Zhuge and walked to the side to explain to Yun Chujio. In the end, he asked worriedly, "Junior sister Yun, what happened? What can I do for you?" Very soon Yun Chujio replied to Zhuge Dong, "Senior Brother Dong, I'm 80% probably in trouble again. You should silently wish me to keep my life." Zhuge Dong sat down on the ground with a thud. Hall Master Zhuge frowned. "What's the matter?" "Hall Master, junior sister Yun, she's in trouble again. She's in trouble," Zhuge Dong said with a sobbing voice. Chapter 3752 was done by Yun Chujio. What did you say?" Hall Master Zhuge felt that he might have misheard. How could that little girl cause trouble again? Or was it a fatal disaster? Zhuge Dong immediately recounted what had just happened. "Hall Master, I heard junior sister Yun's tone doesn't sound like she was joking. What kind of trouble did she cause?" Hall Master Zhuge's face turned ashen. "Since she's asking you about the sword pool, it's highly likely that it's related to the sword pool. You guys continue to forge your swords here. They'll go out and find out if anything has happened to the sword pool." Hall Master Zhuge felt that he had gotten into trouble. Why had this little girl gotten into trouble all of a sudden? Moreover, it was related to the sword pool? It was really killing him. On the other side, Hei Shinjio was thinking about the situation that Zhuge Dong had told her and roughly understood the origin of the sword pool. The sword pool was created by the founder of the Nameless Sword Sect. Ever since the day the Nameless Sword Sect existed, a number of swords would be thrown into it every once in a while. The biggest difference between these swords and ordinary swords in the world was that during the forging process, the sword intent comprehended by the sword forger had to be added into these swords. Therefore not everyone could forge such swords. The four of them only did physical work. At the crucial moment, the sword intent was integrated by Hall Master Zhuge. Among the 27 sword forging halls of the Nameless Sword Sect, the upper house's sword forging hall had exquisite forging techniques, but more importantly, the sword intent added by the upper house's sword forger was even purer. After being placed in the sword pool, the sword light emitted was even brighter. The sword light was actually a mixture of sword chi and sword intent. The sharper the treasured sword, the stronger the sword chi. Therefore, the status of the upper house's sword forging hall was much higher than that of the lower house's sword forging hall. Just as Hei Shinjio was pondering, she heard someone in the noisy crowd shout, Sect Master. We have a situation to report to you. Yun Chujia's heart sank when she saw it. The two people who spoke were the two people she saw in the lower house's sword forging hall yesterday. Yun Chujio did not need to guess what they were trying to say. They were definitely going to report her. Damn it, these two scumbags. Sooner or later she would teach them a lesson. As expected, the two people said, Sect leader, I am Luo Hai of the lower house. I feel that the sword pool incident has something to do with Yun Chujio. Today and yesterday this Yun Chujio has been wandering around the sword pool. Although I did not see what she did, nothing happens to the sword pool sooner or later. It just so happened that she wandered around the sword pool a few times before something happened. It must be her doing. Sect leader, Yu Bo from the lower house. I have the same opinion as senior brother Luo. This Yun Chujia's behavior is very suspicious. We all trained well below. Only she sneakily wandered around the edge of the sword pool, so she must be the one who did this. After hearing Luo Hai and Yu Bo's words, there were others who quickly echoed. Very soon the spearhead was pointed at Yun Chujio. Yun Chujio looked at everyone's eyes that wished they could eat her up. She sincerely admired herself. In just a few days she had become the public enemy of the sect 3 times. She was quite powerful. This fellow slowly walked out from the crowd with an innocent and aggrieved expression. He said, Sect leader, I admit that I have wandered around the edge of the sword pool a few times, but I was purely curious. I have never seen the sword pool before, so I watched it for a while. Could this be considered a crime? Moreover, this sword light is not a spirit stone, and I can even secretly hide it in my storage bag. This thing is not a physical object, how can I steal it? Isn't this too unjust? Chapter 3753 was really not my doing. Although Yun Chujio looked very calm on the surface, she was actually feeling a little uncomfortable in her heart. After all, this guy still had a little bit of conscience. She seemed to be a little unreasonable in this matter. Initially, she just wanted to fix the big kitchen knife and thought that it would be okay to swallow some of the sword light. Who would have thought that the damn big kitchen knife would swallow so much in one go? It was really killing her. This fellow silently made up her mind. After this crisis was over, she would definitely think of a way to fix the sword light that the big kitchen knife had swallowed so that she would not be unable to live with her conscience. Just as this fellow's thoughts were running wild. Elder One said coldly, Sect leader, I think this matter definitely has something to do with Yun Chujio. She has always been eloquent. If we just ask her like this, we definitely won't be able to get anything out of her. Why don't we lock her up first and then interrogate her in detail? Yun Chujio cursed in her heart. This damn old bastard really wanted to kill her immediately. Lock her in the prison? Probably to make it easier for him to kill her? Master Ouyang frowned. This little girl's identity was special. If it was just a normal matter, he could turn a blind eye to it. However, the sword pool was no small matter. Moreover, she was a very important suspect. Why not lock her up first? Master, isn't Elder Wan's words too biased? Everything must be based on evidence. I did wander around the edge of the sword pool, but who saw what I did? So many sword lights disappeared. It can't be a small movement, right? If it was me who did it, how could the people cultivating below not notice it? Moreover, was there a thief as stupid as me? Could it be that he was afraid that others wouldn't know that it was me who did it, and he even deliberately circled around the edge of the sword pool a few times? Moreover, the sword light was simply sword chi and sword intent. It's not like I can't release sword intent. What use is there for me to have that damn thing? Yun Chujio said angrily. When the people present heard Yun Chujio's words, they were stunned at first, and then they laughed out loud one after another. This Yun Chujio is really boastful. She can release sword intent? She has only entered the sect for a few days, how could she release sword intent? That's right, she is only at the 9th level of the spirit transformation realm, how could she release sword intent? Isn't she afraid that the wind will blow her tongue? I reckon that she is just spouting nonsense in order to clear her name. Does she really think that others are fools? Master Ouyang's heart moved, he felt that what Yun Chujio said made some sense. If she was the one who did it, there was no need to be so brazen. Moreover, the sword light was not a material object. He could not steal it even if he wanted to. Could it be that he had really wronged her? The slightly plump Elder Gu asked Yun Chujio curiously, Little girl, you said that you can release sword intent? What sword intent did you comprehend? Yun Chujio touched her nose and said somewhat embarrassedly, Well, the sword intent that I comprehended is quite special. It's the sword intent of chaos. Hearing Yun Chujio's words, everyone burst into laughter again. This Yun Chujio was simply spouting nonsense. She even had the sword intent of chaos. They had heard of the fast sword intent, the slow sword intent, and so on, but this was the first time they had heard of the sword intent of chaos. Elder Gu said with great interest, "Then show it to this old man." Yun Chujio wished that there was someone who would speak up for her. Seeing that this fat old man had a good attitude towards her, she naturally wouldn't offend him. She immediately took out a treasure sword from her storage ring and used the chicken-killing sword technique. The reason why this guy didn't take out the big kitchen knife was because he was afraid that there would be something wrong with the big kitchen knife. Wouldn't that mean that he would confess without fighting? Chapter 3754 Was she wrongly accused? Yun Chujio's body was soon surrounded by a ring of sword intent that seemed to have materialized, instantly silencing the people who had previously sneered at her. All of them had embarrassed looks on their faces. They had entered the sect much longer than Yun Chujio, and their spiritual power was also much higher than hers. However, many of them had yet to comprehend sword intent, and now they felt their faces hurt. Elder Gu nodded his head in approval. This little girl was very agile when she used the sword. What was even more rare was that she had also comprehended the sword intent. She was truly a good seedling to practice the sword. Seeing that Elder Gu did not stop her, Yun Chujio did not stop either. This was because this was a good opportunity for her to think about what to do next. Although her words could resolve some doubts, it was still not convincing. If that was the case, her days in the Nameless Sword sect would be miserable. The sword pool was no small matter. Coupled with the instigation of someone with ulterior motives, many people would make things difficult for her. How could she completely clear the air? The bad thing was that this damn kitchen knife had swallowed too much sword light. Damn it, if she had known that sword intent could repair it, she would have practiced the chicken slaughtering sword technique a few times. Was there a need to steal it here? No, it seemed that it was not enough to just have the sword intent. There had to be sword chi in order to produce the sword light. Damn it, if only she could release the sword light when she was playing with the sword. If she could make up for all the sword light in the sword pool in no time, no one would complain. Of course, this fellow was just thinking. He had never heard of anyone who could release not only the sword intent but also the sword light when practicing the sword. When Hall Master Zhuge arrived, he saw Yun Chujio dancing in front of everyone. Her body was surrounded by a ring of sword intent. Because her movements were too fast, he could only see overlapping figures. Hall Master Zhuge was really shocked. He did not expect this little girl to have comprehended sword intent. However, did the loss of the sword light in the sword pool have anything to do with her? Come and read on our website Wuxia World site. Thanks. Hall Master Zhuge still believed from the bottom of his heart that this matter had nothing to do with Yun Chujio, because he felt that although Yun Chujio had been messing around a little, she still didn't have the guts to have any designs on the sword pool. Moreover, the sword light in the sword pool wasn't some spirit stone. It wasn't something that could be stolen just like that. There must be some misunderstanding. Just as Hall Master Zhuge was thinking about it, Elder Gu signaled for Yun Chujio to stop. After Yun Chujio withdrew her sword technique, she sighed. You all saw it. I can release my sword intent on my own. I really don't need to have any thoughts about those sword glows. Speaking of which, it was my own carelessness. I didn't understand the taboo of the melon field and plum field. I shouldn't have gotten so close to the sword pool to avoid being slandered. Moreover, I'll just say the best words. Which one of you has a way to make the sword glows disappear or steal them? If anyone can come up with a way, I'll admit that I've been wronged. Everyone couldn't help but look at each other when they heard Yun Chujio's words. They really didn't have a way. The sword light wasn't real, so how could they steal it? Moreover, the sword light could take a person's life. If they weren't careful, they would be shot to death by the sword light. What was there to steal? Could it be that Yun Chujio was really wronged? Yun Chujio stole a glance and felt that there was a possibility for this matter. Thus, she straightened her back and said to Master Ouyang, Master Ouyang, I've said everything I can. The disappearance of the sword light really has nothing to do with me. Perhaps there's another reason. Could it be that something happened in the sword pool? Why don't we let Elder Wan go down to the sword pool to take a look? Elder Wan nearly vomited blood when he heard that. Send him down to the sword pool to take a look. The sword pool was filled with sword glows. Before he could enter, he would be shot into a sieve by the sword glows, alright? Chapter 3755 dealt with Yun Chujio. The corner of Master Ouyang's eyes twitched slightly. He could see that this Elder Wan and this Yun Chujio hated each other. They had formed a grudge. Of course, he wouldn't really let Elder Wan go into the sword pool. That was simply sending Elder Wan to his death. Now the situation was in a stalemate. There was no doubt that Yun Chujio was a major suspect. However, what she said made sense. This sword light was different from other things. There was no way she could steal it. Could it really have nothing to do with her? Yun Chujio's face was full of calmness. She was telling the truth. She didn't steal those sword lights at all, okay? It was all done by the big kitchen knife. It really had nothing to do with her. Yes, that was it. Elder Wan said with a gloomy face, "Sect leader, the sword pool is no small matter. In order to be sure, it's better to lock Yun Chujio up first. After we find out the truth, we will release her. Otherwise, if she really has evil intentions and takes the opportunity to escape, it will be bad." Master Ouyang was clearly persuaded by Elder Wan's words. It was better to lock her up first to prevent any unnecessary complications. If they found out that it really had nothing to do with Yun Chujio, they could just compensate her with some sect resources. Yun Chujio's eyes flashed. She knew that no matter what she said, it wouldn't change this result. After all, the sword pool was too important to the nameless sword sect. However, she did not want to be killed in the prison. Thus, she said to Master Ouyang, "Master Ouyang, if you insist on locking me up, I don't have any objections. It's my bad luck. But you also know that I'm not on good terms with some people. Who knows, someone might do something evil in the prison to make me take the blame. So, you have to ensure my safety. Why don't I follow you everywhere? With you watching, I won't be able to escape even if I wanted to. Come and read on our website Wuxia World site. Thanks Master Ouyang, follow him everywhere?" He didn't have time to watch this troublemaker. However, what she said made some sense. If she wasn't the culprit, it was inevitable that the real thief would kill her and let her be the scapegoat. Therefore he had to find a safe place to lock her up. While Master Ouyang was hesitating, Elder Guan said with a smile, "Sect Master, why don't we let this Yun Chujio guard the cave abode of the nameless patriarch for the time being? We can let her return to the lower house after the matter has been investigated." After listening to Elder Guan's words, Master Ouyang pondered for a moment and then nodded, "All right, let Yun Chujio guard the cave abode of the nameless patriarch. We will let her out after the matter has been investigated." Upon hearing their words, Hei Xinjiu couldn't help but mutter in her heart, "Guard the cave abode." Guarding the cave abode wasn't a form of imprisonment? Wouldn't she be able to slack off and leave at any time? These two old men weren't smart, right? However, this fellow felt that it was better than being locked up in a prison, so he didn't say anything. Master Ouyang immediately ordered the people from the discipline hall, "Men, escort Yun Chujio to the cave abode of the nameless patriarch immediately." The people from the discipline hall agreed and then escorted Hei Xinjiu out of the crowd. While they were walking, Yun Chujio's identity jade plate started to tremble. This guy hurriedly sent his spiritual sense into it. Hearing Hall Master Zuji's cold voice, he said, "There is no way to use spiritual power around the cave abode of the nameless patriarch. Moreover, it is forbidden to fly. Take care of yourself." Yun Chujio's heart sank. No wonder he asked her to guard the cave abode of the nameless patriarch. It turned out that spiritual power could not be used inside and it was forbidden to fly? This guy blinked his eyes and quietly took out a large kitchen knife from his storage ring and hid it in his wide sleeve. Chapter 3756. Hei Xinjiu, who was about to starve to death. Hei Xinjiu thought that it must be very boring in some bullshit cave abode, so she swaggered out and called Buttface out and hugged him in her arms. The two discipline hall disciples were a little surprised when they saw Buttface. They looked at each other but did not say anything. Yun Chujio followed the discipline hall disciples for a long time before they arrived at the bottom of a mountain peak. There were more than a dozen disciples of the Nameless Sword sect at the foot of the mountain peak. After checking the documents in the hands of the discipline hall disciples, they handed each of them a jade token. Yun Chujio was wondering why they were given jade tokens when she was urged to climb up a stone platform. A white light flashed past. When Hei Xinjiu regained her sight, she had already reached the top of the mountain peak. There was only a cave at the top and a platform less than 3 meters wide. The stone walls on all 4 sides were as smooth as mirrors and not a single blade of grass grew. Looking down, she could only see clouds and mist lingering around, making her feel an inexplicable sense of fear and loneliness. The people from the discipline hall said to Yun Chujio coldly, "You don't have to think of running away. Not only is flying forbidden here, but spiritual power is also restricted here. There are cliffs and deep valleys down there. You'll definitely die if you fall down." Yun Chujio nodded. "Don't worry. I cherish my life very much. I won't run away." The two disciples of the discipline hall took the jade token from Yun Chujia's hand and stepped into the array. Soon they disappeared and even the teleportation array was gone. Hei Xinjiu looked around and realized that the two disciples of the discipline hall did not leave any food for her. Damn it, they must have done it on purpose. Did they want to starve her to death? Perhaps those two people were Elder Wan, that old bastard. They were trying to starve her to death. How hateful. Fortunately, Xiao Jingjing had woken up. Even if she did not have spiritual power, she could still use the Great Void Mystic Realm. Otherwise she would really starve to death. This fellow was obviously happy too early. When she tried to communicate with the ball of yarn told her a piece of shocking news. Master, Xiao Jingjing has gone into hibernation again. You should think of a way to find food yourself. Yun Chujiu, damn it, did this damn Great Void Mirror want to be a sleeping beauty? If she had nothing to do, she would just go into hibernation and sleep to death. Hei Xinjiu cursed at the Great Void Mirror and looked around the cliff, unwilling to give up. There was nothing on the stone wall, not even a blade of grass. She was going to starve to death. This fellow went into the cave to check again. Even in broad daylight, the light inside was very dim. Hei Xinjiu looked around and found nothing but a stone bed. Hei Xinjiu came out of the cave and sat on the ground. It was over. She did not expect such a talented person like her to starve to death in the end. Soon 2 days had passed. Hei Xinjiu was so hungry that her eyes turned green. Therefore this fellow's gaze fell on Buttface. Buttface immediately shivered. Little fairy, you're not going to eat me, are you? Although it's good that you're so bad, I haven't lived long enough. Yun Chujiu ignored him. All that appeared in front of her eyes were barbecued meat, stewed meat, and fried meat. When Buttface saw Yun Chujiu's gaze, he trembled even more. No wonder this little girl had brought him out earlier. It turned out that she was going to use him as a reserve food. He was too bad. Hei Xinjiu wiped the saliva from her mouth and said fiercely to Buttface, "You better think of a way to get me something to eat or I'll eat you." Chapter 3757, Reinforcements arrived. Buttface was about to cry. What could he do? There were cliffs and cliffs all around, not a blade of grass growing. It seemed that he had no other choice but to sacrifice himself. Buttface gritted his teeth. Little fairy, why don't I bite off one of my legs and you fill your stomach first? Yun Chujiu looked at Buttface in surprise. This fierce beast had a different way of thinking, but it had to be said that this idiot was really silly and cute. Alright, I can't be bothered to eat your lackey. Think of something else. I don't believe that Yun Chujiu will do it. Seeing that Yun Chujiu did not eat him, Buttface immediately wagged his tail and said eagerly, Little fairy, I know that you are the best to me. Don't worry, a disaster like you won't die easily. There must be a way. Hei Xinjiu, damn it, now I really want to eat a dog's leg. Just when Hei Xinjiu was so hungry, the Guai Chao in her dantian shook its leaves, and a drop of crystal clear liquid appeared in Yun Chujiu's palm. Hei Xinjiu was instantly delighted. Although this dog's tail was hateful, it was still quite cute at times. Hei Xinjiu immediately swallowed the drop of liquid. The moment she swallowed it, the hunger and fatigue in her body were swept away. Hei Xinjiu was instantly revived with full health. Buttface shamelessly licked Yun Chujiu's palm. Even the remaining liquid made Buttface roll on the ground in satisfaction. This fellow thought to himself, isn't this thing too delicious? He had made a wise decision to follow this little girl back then. It was worth it even if it was for nothing else. Yun Chujiu couldn't bear to look at Buttface when she saw how useless he was. However, she planned to give a small portion of the Guai Chao to Buttface the next time it gave her the liquid so that he wouldn't be so useless. Hei Xinjiu was full, so she became energetic and began to look around with Buttface. This guy thought shamelessly. Normally, such an expert's cave usually didn't have any secret manuals or treasures. Maybe she would benefit from this misfortune. Unfortunately, she didn't find anything after looking around more than 10 times. Moreover, this guy confirmed one thing again, that there was really not a single blade of grass growing here. There wasn't even any moss or anything like that. This fellow was extremely glad that he had released Buttface in advance, or else she would have been forced to hold it in here all by herself. Hei Xinjiu looked at the clouds and mist, her heart filled with regret. She really should have secretly released little Wu Yun at that time. Anyway, she could just pinch that thing and it would be able to shrink into a small ball. Maybe she could sit on little Wu Yun and go down to the bottom of the valley to take a look. While Hei Xinjiu was thinking, she suddenly noticed that the sky had darkened. She looked up and saw large patches of dark clouds gathering. Her heart skipped a beat. Damn it, could it be that Wu Yun was here to strike her? She was trapped on the top of the mountain and there was no way to escape. Moreover, she could not use her spiritual power here. Wouldn't she die? Buttface also sensed that something was wrong, but the guy said happily, "Little fairy, your reinforcements are here. I told you that you would be fine if you were a scourge, right?" Ah. As expected, scourges live for 1,000 years. Yun Chujio glared at him. Reinforcements? They obviously want my life, okay. I can't take out my cloud fishing hook now, and it's forbidden to fly here. How am I supposed to walk the clouds? Chapter 3758. Why am I so shameless? Buttface wagged his tail and said, "Little fairy, if the heavenly lightning strikes, the array formation here might be broken. Then you will be free again. When the time comes, won't you be happy when you catch a few little Wu Yun?" Hei Shinjio sighed and said, "Buttface, I don't mean to criticize you, but you are really well developed and simple-minded. I don't have any spiritual power at the moment, and I don't have any way to resist the heavenly lightning. I'm afraid that I will be reduced to ashes before the array is broken. Moreover, this is the cave abode of the nameless patriarch. If the heavenly lightning destroys this place, don't you think that the people of the nameless sword sect will collectively raise their swords to hunt me down?" Hearing Hei Xinjia's words, Buttface immediately became listless. Yes, it was different from the last time when his spiritual power was confined. This time he could not use his spiritual power at all. Could it be that Hei Xinjia's little girl would really be struck to death? Oh God, if she died he would probably be struck to death by heavenly lightning. He did not want to die. He had yet to enjoy the prosperity of the world. He had yet to marry a wife. He had yet to become the leader of the 4 great beasts. At this moment, the dark clouds had already gathered at the top of the mountain. Wu Yun looked at Yun Chujio with hatred in his heart. "Damn girl, you are dead for sure today. As long as you die, the 2 cloud wings will be mine again." Hei Shinjio blinked her eyes and waved her claws at Wu Yun. "Hey Xiaoyun, don't hit me yet. I have something important to tell you." Wu Yun did not want to talk to her at first, but it did not matter if he wanted to hear it. No matter what she said, he would not be fooled. "Xiaoyun, you don't know. I've been waiting for your arrival. If I can't see you, I won't be able to die in peace." Wu Yun looked suspiciously at the sincere Hei Shinjio below. She was waiting for it. Was she lying? Yun Chujio said with a guilty expression, "Xiaoyun Sai, I'll tell you the truth. Ever since I took away your 2 cloud wings, my heart has been riddled with guilt and remorse. Tell me, why am I so shameless? How can I openly take your 2 cloud wings as my own? A person like me really deserves to be struck by lightning. I simply deserve to be struck by lightning into dregs." When Wu Yun in the sky heard what Yun Chujio said, he felt that what she said was too damn right. This smelly girl was really shameless and deserved to be struck by lightning. Could it be that this stinky girl's conscience had been discovered? That's not right. This stinky girl had always been scheming and scheming, she could not be fooled. Just as Wu Yun was feeling suspicious, he heard Yun Chujio let out a long sigh. "Little Yun, I really know my mistake. I even wrote you a confession letter. I wrote it for you with tears in my eyes. I feel that I have let you down the most in my life. Unfortunately, I can't use my spiritual power now, so I can't show it to you. Xiao Yun, I originally wanted to return Xiao Wu Yun to you when I saw you, but I can't take it out now. I can only wait for you to find a way to bring Xiao Wu Yun back after I die. Now come on, chop me to death. To be able to die in your hands, I can be considered to have died for a worthy cause. I can also be considered to have redeemed my dark soul." Buttface, who was hiding in the cave, was dumbstruck when he heard this. Oh yo. This owner of his was truly an oddity of the ages. She actually scolded him so smoothly, but what was the purpose of her words? Could it be that she still had the delusion that Wu Yun would let her off? Wu Yun wouldn't be so stupid, right? Chapter 3759. The little Yun that I care about the most. Although Wu Yun was skeptical about what Yun Chujio said, he felt that what Yun Chujio said made some sense. That was, if this stinky girl died unless someone picked up her storage ring and took out the little Wu Yun, it wouldn't be able to take back the little Wu Yun. Otherwise, it wouldn't be able to take back the little Wu Yun. Therefore Wu Yun began to hesitate. Should he kill this wretched girl? Wu Yun hesitated for a long time and finally decided to kill the scourge Yun Chujio because this scourge was full of bad ideas. If he did not take advantage of this good opportunity to kill her, it might be very difficult to kill her in the future. Thinking of this, Wu Yun was about to unleash heavenly thunder when he heard He Xingjiu sigh. Little Yun Yun, I've committed a lot of sins in my life. I don't even have the face to live anymore. Don't be soft-hearted. You'd better kill me as soon as possible. Don't worry. If there is a next life, I'll make it up to you. When the time comes, I'll use the cloud fishing hook to take down the other Wu Yun's wings and give them to you so that you can become the biggest and most powerful Wu Yun. When the time comes, those little bastards will have to listen to you. You will be the #1 cloud in the world. When the Wu Yun in the sky heard the first few words, it snorted in its heart. At least you still have some self-awareness. However, when it heard the last few words, its heart suddenly moved. Bring the cloud wings of the other Wu Yun over to it? Wu Yun could not help but be lost in thought. If it could really bring the cloud wings of the other Wu Yun over to it, wouldn't its strength quickly soar? At that time, it was possible that he could even cultivate into a human form. Yun Chujio saw that Wu Yun did not move for a long time, and her heart was delighted. It seemed that she had spoken to this wretched cloud. She had to work harder. Little Yun Yun, as the saying goes, when a man is about to die, his words should be kind. Let me say a few words from the bottom of my heart to you. Last time, when you brought the other dark clouds to attack me, at the critical moment, none of those rainbow clouds saved you. They were all a bunch of wretched clouds that were gloating over your misfortune. Are you angry? Do you really want to be stronger than them? Just you wait, it'll definitely help you in your next life. It'll bring the cloud wings on their bodies over to you. When the time comes, you can torture them to death. He Xingjiu kept stirring up the conflict between Wu Yun and rainbow clouds. Moreover, she kept bragging about how awesome Wu Yun would be after he obtained the other cloud wings. Wu Yun was soon attracted by the beautiful scene described by the guy. He was fantasizing about becoming the best cloud in the world, and he even found He Xingjiu pleasing to the eye. He Xingjiu felt that the time was right, so she said, "Sigh. It would be great if I didn't die. I will definitely help you fulfill your wish and make you the best cloud in the world. However, I know that you came with an order. If you let me go, you will suffer. I can't hurt you anymore. Otherwise, my conscience will hurt. Come on, it's getting late. Hurry up and kill me. I will make it up to you in my next life. Farewell. Xiao Yun, whom I missed the most." The dark clouds in the sky trembled and felt extremely conflicted. Why not let this wretched girl go this time? And then let her take the opportunity to help me get a few cloud wings in the future? When the time came, it would become powerful without anyone knowing. Wouldn't that be a wonderful thing? Yun Chujio glanced at the dark cloud in the sky. Seeing that Wu Yun did not make a move, she knew that it was moved. This fellow was secretly delighted. TSK, this Wu Yun was really simple and gullible. Chapter 3760 was poisoned by a poison called Little Fairy. He Xingjiu rolled her eyes and said with tears streaming down her face, "Little Yun Yun, do you not want me to die? I knew it. You are the kindest cloud in the world. What I did in the past was simply inhuman. Don't worry. Next time you strike me, don't come again. Find a way to get other clouds to come over. I promise to get you a few cloud wings. Soon you will become the #1 cloud in the world. If I don't keep my word, I will be a barking dog. I will be a barking cat." Wu Yun was finally convinced. In any case, it had nothing to do with whether this wretched girl was dead or alive. If he could get a few cloud wings, even if the mission failed, it would be worth it to receive some punishment. Wu Yun shuddered at the thought and agreed to Yun Chujio's idea. Yun Chujio wiped the crocodile's tears with her sleeve and smiled like a flower. "Little Yun Yun, I knew you wouldn't let me go. We are good partners who love each other and kill each other. Don't worry, I always keep my word. Just wait to be the #1 Yun in the world. However, since you are already here, it's not easy to explain if you don't chop a few times. You chop a few times symbolically. When you leave, you can also chop a few times at the sword pool. That way I can escape. Dear little Yun Yun, I love you. Let me show you how careful I am." Wu Yun was fooled by He Xingjiu so much that he couldn't even find his north. He immediately chopped a few times on the mountain peak, then chopped around for a while. Finally, he floated to the top of the sword pool and chopped a dozen times before he floated away happily. Wu Yun suddenly stopped halfway. That's not right. Why was he still waiting for that stinky girl to fish for the cloud wings? He should have just let that stinky girl return his 2 cloud wings to him first. However, he had already flown so far away. He could not go back anymore. Forget it. The next time he fooled a cloud over, and the next time he went over, he would be able to take back all his money and interest. Well, just like that, it was simply awesome. He Xingjiu saw that Wu Yun had drifted away and sat on the ground. Damn it, he had finally passed this round. Buttface ran out of the cave and wagged his tail at He Xingjiu. Little fairy, you are simply the worst person in the world. You dare to lie to Wu Yun, you are really too bad. What should I do? I feel that I have been poisoned by a poison called Little Fairy, and I want to be by your side at all times. Yun Chujio was already used to this idiotic way of speaking. She ignored him and thought to herself, now that the sword pool has been struck by heavenly lightning, the nameless sword sect will probably attribute the abnormality of the sword pool to the heavenly lightning very soon. This way they would soon let her go back. This fellow was very pleased with himself. Buttface was right. This silly Yun was really her savior. However, after waiting for a while, He Xingjiu didn't wait for anyone to come and pick her up. This fellow immediately panicked. What on earth was going on? Cough cough, the thing was like this. After learning that the sword pool had been hacked, Master Ouyang and the others had indeed attributed the sudden decrease in sword light to the heavenly lightning. Could it be that the existence of the sword pool was too heaven-defying, so the heavenly Tao had sent down heavenly punishment? In that case, that Yun Chujio was really wronged. Since that was the case, there was no reason to keep her locked up. Thus, Master Ouyang immediately ordered the people of the discipline hall to take out the document and release Yun Chujio. Then Master Ouyang quickly received a piece of news that left him dumbstruck. The teleportation array of the ancestral master's abode had been destroyed by the heavenly lightning, so there was no way to release Yun Chujio for a while. Chapter 3761. Let's go out and play. Master Ouyang had no choice but to ask his men to quickly repair the damaged teleportation array and put this matter aside for the time being. In any case, although the ancestral master's cave abode was a little lonely and cold, it was not dangerous. It was not a big deal for Yun Chujio to stay for a few more days. After Elder One heard the news, a cold and sinister smile appeared on his face. His men deliberately did not leave any food for that smelly girl. If they delayed any longer, that smelly girl would die without a doubt. At the thought of Yun Chujio starving to death, Elder One felt extremely comfortable. In order to be sure, he even specially bribed a disciple who was in charge of repairing the array formation to secretly use some tricks to slow down the progress of the repair. On the other end, He Xingjiu was still bitterly waiting for someone to let her out. If this fellow knew that the heavenly lightning had destroyed the teleportation array, he would probably scold Wu Yun until he was drenched in blood. However, this guy did not know yet. He was still wondering what had happened. Why didn't someone come to let her out? After waiting for a few more days, this guy felt that it was better to rely on herself than anyone else. She did not believe that she could not leave this damn place. This guy leaned on the edge of the cliff and observed it. The cliff wall was very smooth and steep. She did not have any sticky silk in her hands. It seemed that it was impossible to leave the cliff. She looked around the cave again, but she still couldn't find any way out. Could it be that she had to dig out of the cave? However, she didn't know how high the damn mountain was. If it was very high, it would take a long time to dig to the end. He Xingjiu had thought about letting Guai Chao summon the demon beasts, but it was forbidden to fly here and there was no spiritual power, so how could there be demon beasts coming? Sure enough, Guai Chao tried it, but other than making butt-face drool, there was no effect at all. On this day, He Xingjiu sat on the stone bed with her chin in her hand at a loss. Buttface ran in from the outside. Little fairy, it's sunny outside, let's go outside and play. He Xingjiu glared at it. Play with your big head, ghost. You only know how to play all day long. I'm afraid we will be trapped here to death. Buttface was not angry. Anyway, the more He Xingjiu scolded him, the more he felt that He Xingjiu treated him well. It had to be said that Buttface was a masochist. Little fairy, you can even fool Wu Yun. You'll find a way to leave this damn place sooner or later. It's all that nameless patriarch's fault. Why did he cultivate on the mountain peak for no reason? He's simply full of himself. Yun Chujio suddenly stood up. What did you say? Say it again. Buttface jumped in fright and stammered out what he had just said. Yun Chujio's eyes lit up. That's right. Since that nameless patriarch was cultivating here, he must have a way to leave. Otherwise, how did he build the teleportation array? However, how did he leave? He Xingjiu shared her thoughts with Buttface, who fawned over her again. Then he said excitedly, Little fairy, I believe that you will definitely think of a way to leave. Take your time to think about it. I will go out and play with my own shadow for a while. Yun Chujio, she couldn't be bothered to scold Buttface anymore. Countless thoughts flashed through her mind. How did the nameless patriarch leave? Perhaps he had some sort of rope on him and climbed down the cliff? Although this was feasible, wasn't it a little too uncool for the patriarch to do this? Then how did he leave? Chapter 3762. The miserable Buttface. While Hei Shinjio was thinking, Buttface's excited voice came from outside. Little fairy, why are there two shadows? Aha, am I going to become two of me? Yun Chujio frowned. What a mess. However, she still came out of the cave and saw Buttface spinning in a circle. There was an obvious shadow on the ground and a faint shadow. If she didn't pay attention, she wouldn't be able to see it at all. When Buttface saw Yun Chujio come out, he said smugly, Little fairy, do you see it? I have two shadows. But you don't have any. Yun Chujio looked at her feet. Sure enough, she only had one shadow and only Buttface had two shadows. Yun Chujio frowned. She didn't think that this was a magical thing. The number of shadows corresponded with the number of light sources. This could only mean that Buttface was in a position other than the sun. There was another light source. Yun Chujio walked to Buttface's side. Sure enough, two shadows appeared under her feet. She estimated the direction and looked into the distance. Amidst the clouds, she could vaguely see a faint light at the bottom of the slope in the distance. It seemed that something was reflecting the light of the sun, so two shadows appeared. Yun Chujio was immediately interested. However, the light at the bottom of the slope was very faint, and it was blocked by the clouds, so she could not see the specific situation. This guy blinked his eyes and marked the direction of the light source on the ground. Then he took out his large kitchen knife to look for an angle to reflect the light of the sun, trying to see the situation at the bottom of the slope clearly. Perhaps it was because he had swallowed a lot of sword light, but the large kitchen knife was much brighter, so it could be used as a mirror. Yun Chujio finally managed to reflect the sunlight in the marked direction after many attempts. However, the area of the kitchen knife was too small, so she could only vaguely see the shimmering water below it. Hei Shinjio suddenly had a guess. Could it be that there was a pond under the mountain? Yun Chujio suddenly felt that her previous thought might be wrong. Perhaps the reason why Patriarch Nameless treated this place as a cave abode was not because it was pretentious, but because of the pond below? Then the question now was, should she jump or not? Even if there really was a pool below, who knew if there were aquatic demon beasts inside? She might die if she jumped. However, if she didn't jump, she didn't know what the current situation was like. She couldn't just sit here and wait for death, right? Hei Shinjio blinked her eyes, took the large kitchen knife, and chopped a rock, throwing it in the direction of the light. After a long while, Yun Chujio heard a splash coming from below. She guessed correctly. It was indeed water below. And judging from the sound, the pool was very deep. She tilted her ears to listen but did not hear any other sounds. Could it be that there were no demon beasts below? This fellow threw a few more rocks down, but the effect was the same as the first rock. Other than the sound of falling into the water, there was no other sound. Hei Shinjio was at a loss. Should she jump or not? Unfortunately, before Hei Shinjio could come to a conclusion, the miserable Buttface fell down. It was like this. Buttface was shocked by Hei Xinjia's cleverness. Just because it had an extra shadow, she found the pool below? How did she do it? Therefore, this fellow would lie on the edge of the cliff and look down, trying to find some clues. Coincidentally, the rock on the edge of the cliff was a little loose, so Buttface did not notice and fell down. Chapter 3763. Pool of Water. Yun Chujio heard a thump in the cave and thought that Buttface had thrown another stone, so she didn't care. After a long time, Buttface didn't come in to show off. Yun Chujio walked out of the cave suspiciously and looked around, but she didn't see Buttface. Yun Chujio's heart sank. This platform was only so big, where could Buttface go? Could he have fallen down? She lay on the edge of the cliff and shouted, Buttface, Buttface. Other than the whistling wind, there was no other sound. Yun Chujio suddenly saw a clear mark on the edge of the cliff. Her head buzzed. Without a doubt, Buttface had fallen down. Yun Chujio was furious. Buttface was an idiot. Why was he lying so close to the cliff? Did he fall to his death? Or was he eaten by some demon beast? Otherwise, why was there no movement at all? Although Yun Chujio despised Buttface, she couldn't just leave him to die, right? What if he didn't die? However, would she lose her life if she jumped down? In the end, Yun Chujio gritted her teeth and began to hack at the cliff wall with her cleaver. The cleaver was so sharp that it could almost make a dent that could fit a foot. Yun Chujio climbed down with difficulty bit by bit. As she climbed, she continued to call out to Buttface. Finally, after she had climbed for some distance, Buttface's voice could be heard faintly from below. Although she couldn't hear what he said clearly, it was clear that this idiot was safe and sound. Yun Chujio heaved a sigh of relief, but she still didn't dare to be careless. She climbed down bit by bit. Even if Buttface was fine, it didn't mean that she would be fine even if she jumped down. There was a certain probability for many things, not to mention that Buttface was much lighter than her. Even if she fell into the water, she would be in a much better condition than her. After an unknown amount of time, Yun Chujio finally passed through the layers of clouds and saw the situation below. The deep blue pool water was intoxicating. Buttface was swimming happily inside. It was simply too beautiful. Zinjia's heart was filled with hatred. Damn Buttface. I'll deal with him later. Seeing that there was no danger below, Yun Chujio did not waste any more effort. She directly jumped into the pool water. The pool was not as cool as Yun Chujio imagined. Instead, it was a comfortable temperature. No wonder Buttface enjoyed it so much. Buttface eagerly swam over. Little fairy, you are so smart. It is indeed a pool down here. It is a pity that there is not a single fish here. Otherwise, I could have caught a few for you to enjoy. Yun Chujio naturally knew that Buttface was trying to be a good boy so that she wouldn't have to deal with it. However, she didn't have the time to deal with it now. She wasn't afraid of settling the score. She would deal with it when she got out. Yun Chujio looked around. Other than the cliff that she had jumped down from, the surrounding three sides were also cliff walls. Moreover, they were all bare and not a single blade of grass grew. She originally thought that this was an exit, but now it seemed that she wouldn't be able to get out either. Could it be that the nameless ancestral master had come all this way just to take a bath here? Was that why she went through so much trouble to build a cave abode? Was she crazy? Of course, this pool of water wasn't stagnant water. There should be a spring or an underground river underneath, but her water-repellent bead was in her storage ring, so she had no way of getting down to the bottom of the water. Chapter 3764, There was a ghost. Although Buttface was a good swimmer, he was not an aquatic demon beast after all. He was only limited to swimming. Therefore, the matter of finding the spring or going out of the underground river was basically lost. Yun Chujio made up her mind. After going out this time, she would make the water-repellent bead into a pendant and hang it around her neck. Otherwise, if she encountered such a situation again, she would learn from her mistakes. After a while, Buttface was obviously refreshed. After all, there was not even a fish in the pool. It was really boring. She might as well play with her own shadow. This guy blinked his eyes. Little fairy, why don't we climb up again? Yun Chujio wished that she could drown it in the water. Climb up. It was easy to say. It was okay to climb down, but it was not so easy to climb up. When Buttface saw Yun Chujio's gloomy face, he shrunk his neck and did not dare to make a sound. He was also very innocent, okay? He did not want to fall down. When he fell down, he was shocked. He thought that he, a fierce beast of his generation, had been smashed into meat paste. Fortunately, nothing happened in the end. In the future, no matter what, he had to stay away from the edge of the cliff. Dog too felt that the atmosphere was a little awkward, so it tried to find something to say. Little fairy, look at the clouds and mist above. How do you think the water light we saw before was reflected up there? Yun Chujio frowned when she heard Dog 2's words. Because of the clouds and mist, the light here was not so bright even in the daytime. The water light was not enough to reflect the light that passed through the clouds. Then what was the reflection of the light that she had seen before? Perhaps there was a gap in the clouds and fog? Or was there some treasure under the pool? Thinking of this, Yun Chujio suddenly became energetic. She took a deep breath and dived into the water. For some reason, Buttface also dived into the water. There was white sand under the pool, but there was nothing on it. Not to mention treasures, there was not even a single water plant. Yun Chujio couldn't help but feel a little discouraged. It seemed that this was just an ordinary pool. She had to think of a way to get up there. Perhaps the sect would send someone to pick her up. However, after all this trouble, the sky had already darkened. Yun Chujio could only use her large kitchen knife to cut a pile of stones and place them at the edge of the pool. This way at least she and Buttface wouldn't have to soak in the water. Dog 2 said obsequiously, Little fairy, I know that no difficulties or obstacles can stop you. You can always come up with a good idea. You are the smartest bad person I have ever met. Yun Chujio couldn't be bothered with it. Fortunately, the temperature around the pool wasn't low. Otherwise she would have been drenched and frozen. She didn't know if it was because of the night, but a lot of the clouds had dissipated. She could vaguely see a full moon. Only then did Yunchuja remember that today was September 15th. She had actually entered the Nameless Sword sect for more than a month. However, during this month she spent most of her time on the mountain top. Must have been quite tragic. Thinking of this, Yunchujo picked up the big kitchen knife and muttered, small fry, this is all your fault. If you weren't greedy and swallowed so many sword lights in one go, would I have fallen to this state? Are you stupid? Don't you know that water flows slowly? If you insist on eating until you become a fat man, aren't you afraid of being stuffed? While Hei Shinjo was mumbling, Buttface tugged at her sleeve with his paw and said in a trembling voice, little fairy, there's a ghost. Chapter 3765. Mysterious Sword Technique. Yunchujo almost slapped Buttface into the pool. You, an ancient beast, are afraid of ghosts? It would make people laugh out loud. Besides, it would be great if there were ghosts in this godforsaken place. Then she could find a way out first. Although Yunchujo felt that Buttface was trying to scare her, she still looked in the direction that Buttface was pointing. However, other than a stone wall that she could vaguely see, there was nothing unusual, and there were no ghosts. Buttface, where's the ghost? Where's the ghost? I think you're the ghost. Yunchujo said angrily. Buttface bit his paw. Ouch, it hurts. This proved that he was not dreaming just now. How could he have disappeared? Yunchujo glared at Buttface. She thought that he was just messing around. She raised her kitchen knife to check how the cracks were mending. At that moment, Buttface cried out again, ah, ghost? The ghost has appeared again. Little fairy, save me. I'm so scared. Yunchujo put down her kitchen knife. When she looked again, there was still nothing. She was so angry that she kicked Buttface into the pool. Buttface, if you continue to talk nonsense, you can soak in the water tonight. Little fairy, I'm not lying to you. There was really a ghost over there. Buttface explained anxiously. He had really seen a ghost. Seeing that Buttface did not look like he was lying, Yunchujo thought about what had happened just now. Finally, her gaze fell on the kitchen knife. Was it because the kitchen knife reflected the moonlight? Yunchujo held the large kitchen knife and kept trying. Finally, she saw the ghost that Dog 2 had mentioned. The reflection of the light from the large kitchen knife shone on the stone wall opposite them. A human figure appeared on top of it. It was a human figure who was brandishing a sword. Dog 2 crawled out of the pool and said with a trembling voice, Look, I'm not lying to you, right? If that's not a ghost, what is it? Yunchujo was not in the mood to pay attention to it. She looked at the figure dancing with her sword with a burning gaze. Although the move was surprisingly slow, it gave off a feeling that it was not simple. As she looked at it, Yunchuji's eyes could not help but light up. She realized that some of the moves used by the figure looked very familiar. Wasn't this the move that old man Ouyang used when he was competing with her? It was just that the moves used by this figure were even more mysterious than old man Ouyang's. There were actually thousands of changes in one move. It was simply too unbelievable. When Buttface saw that Yunchujo was lost in her thoughts, he tactfully did not disturb her anymore. He was very pleased in his heart. See, Buttface was a beast of fortune. He could casually fall into a pool and let the little fairy learn a mysterious sword technique. The little fairy would definitely reward him well. Yunchujo looked at the rock wall in a daze, memorizing every move in her heart. To be honest, she did not think that sword techniques were that great. Entering the Nameless Sword sect was just a choice she had no choice but to make. However, when she saw the sword technique used by the figure on the rock wall, she felt that she was a frog at the bottom of a well in the past. The profoundness of this swordsmanship was beyond her imagination. She even felt that if her spiritual power reached a certain level, she would be invincible just by using this swordsmanship. Although she herself felt that this idea was a little ridiculous, she had to admit that this swordsmanship had opened the door to a new world. However, in the end there was no way to see it. This guy was so anxious that he wanted to hit the wall, but there was no better way. She could only comfort herself and wait until tomorrow night to continue watching. She would definitely be able to see the next move. However, on the second night, no matter how she adjusted the position of the kitchen knife, she could not see the figure on the stone wall anymore. 3 days passed in a row. Hei Shinjo thought of countless ways, but she still could not see the figure on the stone wall. Buttface said weakly, "Little fairy, maybe it's not the light. Could it be that the ghost only came out on a full moon?" Yun Chujio was stunned. She was really smart and muddled for a moment. What Buttface said made sense. It was very likely that the shadow would only appear on a full moon. It was useless for her to do anything now. Yun Chujio suddenly had an idea. Could it be that the nameless patriarch had accidentally discovered the sword technique on the cliff in this pool, so he built a cave abode to cover his tracks? The more Yun Chujio thought about it, the more she felt that her idea was reliable. The move used by Master Ouyang had obviously evolved from the move on the cliff. Perhaps the nameless patriarch had learned the sword technique from the cliff and founded the Nameless Sword Sect. Why was it called the Nameless Sword Sect? Wasn't it because he didn't know what the name of the sword technique was? However, there was another suspicious point, which was why the pond would occasionally reflect light. Could it be that the clouds would occasionally fade? Yun Chujio pondered for a long time, but she still couldn't figure it out. The question before her now was, should she wait here for another month or think of a way to go up or find another way out? It was obviously not realistic to wait for a month. There was only a small piece of land that she had built with stones by the side of the pool. These 3 days had almost driven her crazy. It would not work even if she climbed up. Not only would it be risky, but she might also be trapped up there forever. Therefore, it was better to think of a way to find another way out. Otherwise, she would have to dig a hole in the wall of the mountain. However, it would take a long time before they could dig it out. This was equivalent to Yugong moving the mountain. While Yun Chujio was soaking in the pool and sighing, Buttface said excitedly, "Fish. Fish. Little fairy has fish." Before Yun Chujio could regain her senses, she saw Buttface diving into the water. It was obvious that he was going to catch fish. Yun Chujio frowned. She and Buttface had searched the pool dozens of times. There wasn't even any water grass, let alone fish. How could a fish suddenly appear? She also dove into the water curiously. She saw Buttface chasing after a small silver fish the size of a palm. The fish swam quickly and soon disappeared into the sand. Buttface was so angry that he used his claws to dig and dig. Then he and Heishinjio were in a tragic situation. The sand suddenly collapsed and a huge gust of air swept over, sucking both Buttface and Yun Chujio in. Yun Chujio only had one thought at the moment, and that was to strangle this idiot Buttface to death. The water came pouring in from all directions. Yun Chujio felt that she was going to drown for a moment, but this guy suddenly blessed her heart. Oh my, she still had Guaichao. What was she afraid of? She just had to drink up the pool of water. As for Buttface, there was nothing she could do. She could only hope that he could hold on until she drank up the pool of water. Just as Heishinjio was about to drink up the water in the pond, she did not expect that her long-lost spiritual power had recovered. The guy quickly took out 2 water-repellent beads and held one for himself. Just as he was about to give the other one to Buttface, he saw Buttface with his eyes closed and his belly full. He was floating up. Could it be that Buttface had drowned? Yun Chujio could not care less and quickly swam to Buttface's side. She dragged him to the shore and began to squeeze the water in his stomach. Although the water in his stomach was squeezed out, Buttface still did not breathe or have a heartbeat. Heishinjio gritted her teeth. It seemed that she could only do artificial respiration. Just as Heishinjio approached Buttface with a heroic expression, Buttface opened his dog eyes. "Little fairy. What are you doing? Although I like you, I don't like you in that way. You don't taint my innocence." Heishinjio, she really wanted to throw this idiot back into the water. Seeing that Buttface was alive and kicking again, Heishinjio couldn't be bothered with him. Only then did she have the time to take a look at their surroundings. There were moss-covered rocks under their feet, and not far away was a slow-flowing water. It seemed that this place was an underground river. Moreover, the water temperature was higher than ordinary river water. It was very likely that it was made of hot spring water. PN0V1 calm. Just as Yun Chujio was thinking about it, Buttface ran to Yun Chujio's side and said, "Little fairy, I thought I was dead for sure just now. I didn't expect that I would survive the disaster. Indeed, there are many benefits to following a wicked person like you. However, you are not allowed to have any ideas about me in the future. You are a human and I am a beast. We cannot be together. Moreover, if that evil star knows that you have a crush on me, he will kill me. Get lost." Yun Chujio kicked Buttface into the dark river. She should not have saved this idiot just now. Now that Buttface had recovered his spiritual power, it was obvious that he was much more flexible than before. He simply started to catch fish in the water. Not to mention he really caught a few small silver fish that he had seen before. He said eagerly, "Little fairy, this fish looks very fragrant. Let's roast it and eat it." Yun Chujio had been craving for fish these days. She immediately took out dry wood from her storage ring and began to roast the fish. Of course, while waiting for the fish to be cooked, she and Buttface killed 10 meat buns and a roast chicken. Even so, when the aroma of the grilled fish spread, Hei Shinjio and Buttface were still drooling. Oh, this grilled fish was too fragrant. The two didn't bother to burn their mouths and quickly ate the small fish. After eating the two fish, they realized that there were still a few in the spirit beast bag. It didn't seem good to eat alone. Sure enough, Xiao Hanio said sourly, "Master, aren't you being too biased? You only know how to pet Buttface now. It really makes us sad." Buttface said proudly, "Ever since I, Buttface, became the little fairy spirit beast, I have received the little fairy's favor alone. There are a few spirit beasts, but the little fairy only dotes on me. So I advised the fairy to be even with the rain and dew, but the fairy refused to listen. Fairy just dotes on me, just dotes on me, Yun Chujio." The corner of Yun Chujio's eyes twitched, and then she put the smug Buttface into the spirit beast bag. Sure enough, soon the scream of Buttface came from her spiritual sense, and it was the most tragic kind. Yun Chujio pursed her lips. Damn it. This idiot had been playing tricks recently, so it was a good time to teach him a lesson. Yun Chujio did not stay idle either. She used the ball of yarn to weave a sticky net and started fishing in the water. Her efficiency was much higher than Buttface's. In a short while she had caught more than 100 fish. However, this fellow felt that there were too many monks and too little porridge. It was still not enough, so she continued to catch fish along the way. The fish in the dark river had suffered. They basically had no natural enemies in this place. Who would have thought that they would encounter such a jinx? They were almost wiped out by this fellow. Yun Chujio recalled that she had obtained quite a number of immortal springs in the origin-killing sect. Later on she had gotten Wu Ball to bring them into the Great Void Mystic Realm. She did not know how Wu Ball operated it. In any case, the green jade prawns and green jade lotus roots had taken root in the Great Void Mystic Realm in the end. It was most likely because although the green jade prawns and green jade lotus roots were rare, their grades were not high. In any case, because they were produced and sold by themselves, Yun Chujio was already tired of eating them. This fellow followed the same pattern and got a lot of dark river water. Then he got the ball of wool to bring it into the Great Void Mystic Realm, and even the small silver fish. Hei Shinjio suddenly felt very satisfied. She could eat as much as she wanted in the future. After all, it was her own home. After eating and drinking, this fellow finally began to think about serious matters. He did not know where the dark river led to, so it was better to be more careful. Therefore, he took off his spirit-concealing ring and swam forward carefully. When Hei Shinjio was swimming forward, she heard a voice from afar. Hei Shinjio was shocked and looked around. Finally, she saw two protruding rocks on the roof of the cave not far away. The gap in the middle was just enough to hide her figure. She immediately jumped up and held her breath to look down. Soon the voice became clear. "Senior Brother Wan, it has been almost a month. That Yun Chujio is most likely dead. I heard that the discipline hall was careless and did not leave anything for her to eat. That stinky girl did bring a puppy in, but it was only enough to eat for 2 days. Now she has starved to death. She deserves it. Who asked her to offend Senior Brother Wan and Elder Wan? She is simply courting death." Yun Chujio frowned and felt that the voice was somewhat familiar. She looked carefully and saw that there were 3 people standing on the ship. The 2 people who spoke were Luo Hai and Yu Bo, who had reported her. As for the other person, she also knew him. It was the grandson of Elder Wan, Wan Pengcheng, who had been beaten up by her. They were really enemies on a narrow road. Wan Pengcheng only sneered when he heard the words of his 2 followers and did not reply. Wan Pengcheng snorted coldly, 2 to 3 months? Don't worry, that teleportation formation will not be fixed for at least half a year. That bitch is dead for sure. Hearing this, Yun Chujio couldn't help but be a little dumbfounded. So she hadn't been released for such a long time. Was it because that idiot Wu Yun had broken the teleportation array? And what did that Wan Pengcheng mean by his last words? Could it be that he had done something to it? Just as Yun Chujio was thinking, she heard Luo Hai say with some doubt, "Senior Brother Wan, let's not talk about that bitch first. How come we have walked so far and haven't seen a worryless fish?" Yubo also echoed, Yeah, if we had walked so far in the past, we would have caught a few. How come we haven't seen any today? Wan Pengcheng said impatiently, what's the rush? If we look further ahead, we might have already swum to the front. Luo Hai immediately flattered. Senior brother Wan is still able to keep his cool. There's a formation set up at the exit of this underground river. Besides, there are no other living creatures in this underground river other than the worryless fish, so there definitely won't be any problems. Those worryless fish must have gathered at the front. Yun Chujio couldn't hear the words of the three people behind her clearly because the boat was too far away. The corners of this fellow's mouth curled up into a sneer. Worryless fish? Now that those little things were all in her great void mystic realm, these three idiots wouldn't be able to laugh very soon. This fellow couldn't help but secretly rejoice. Fortunately, after she roasted the fish, she removed all traces of it one by one for safety reasons. Otherwise it would really be a bad thing. However, now was a good opportunity to leave. Since the three of them had entered, perhaps the array formation at the exit had not been activated. It was a good opportunity to slip out. Hence, Yun Chujio jumped into the pool and quickly swam towards the exit of the underground river. As expected, there was only a huge net blocking the exit of the underground river. There was no array formation. Yun Chujio easily passed through the huge net. Pinin 0v1 outside the entrance was a valley. The water that flowed out formed a stream that meandered forward. Yun Chujio did not dare to stay any longer. She carefully removed the footprints that she had left behind and then leaped away from the stream. As she ran, she thought about what she had said after seeing Master Ouyang. After running for a few miles, she checked the map and realized that she was actually very close to the teleportation formation that she had entered the nameless ancestral master's cave. He rolled his eyes and immediately had an idea. She carefully approached the teleportation array and did not see the disciples who were originally guarding it. There were only a few disciples who were repairing the teleportation array there. The few disciples were chatting and laughing while repairing the array leaves at a leisurely pace. They were obviously very perfunctory. Hei Shinjio secretly hated them. According to their negative attitude, they would probably not be able to repair it in half a year. They were all fucking bad things. Yun Chujio secretly released Xiao Mogu and gave a few instructions. Then Xiao Mogu burrowed into the ground. After a while, when the few disciples who repaired the array were chatting and laughing, one of them looked at a place not far away in surprise and exclaimed, "Oh my god, look, how can those mushrooms move on their own?" The other disciples looked in the direction he pointed and indeed, there were a few brightly colored poisonous mushrooms jumping into the depths of the forest. Could these mushrooms be some rare spiritual plants? Oh my god, brothers, what are you still standing there for? We're rich. As that person spoke, he rushed into the forest. The other disciples also dropped the things in their hands and hurriedly followed him. Seeing that those people had gone far away, Yun Chujio then kept the Xiao Mogu that had already returned into her spirit beast bag. Then she leaped onto the teleportation platform and lay on her back like a little bastard. Very soon, those disciples who had repaired the array formation returned with a few poisonous mushrooms in their hands in high spirits. However, when they saw Hei Shinjio on the teleportation platform, they were instantly dumbfounded. They almost threw the poisonous mushroom on the ground. How did Yun Chujio appear? Wasn't the teleportation platform broken? Besides, even if the teleportation platform was good, she wouldn't be able to come out without a jade token, right? Just when they were dumbfounded, Hei Shinjio opened her eyes and looked at them blankly. Then, she revealed a pleasantly surprised expression. I came out? I really came out? It seems that the patriarch did not lie to me. He really sent me out. The few disciples were even more dumbfounded. What did the patriarch mean by sending her out? Just as the few of them were puzzled, Yun Chujio said with a smile, "Eh? I remember that when I went in, you guys weren't the ones guarding this teleportation array. I know you guys should be taking turns to guard it, right? I don't want to talk to you anymore. I still have something important to tell the sect master. He'll talk to you another day." Hei Shinjio hopped out of the teleportation platform while talking, leaving the dumbfounded disciples behind. The disciples looked at each other, apparently still in a daze. Brothers, what's going on? Why did that Yun Chujio come out all of a sudden? It doesn't matter how she came out. We have to keep the mushroom incident a secret. Otherwise we will be punished by the sect. That's right. If the higher-ups find out that we went AWOL, they will definitely punish us. We will bite Yun Chujio to death and suddenly appear on the teleportation platform. Hei Shinjio had already expected that the disciples would do this, so she was not worried that there would be a loophole in her story at all. She happily hopped onto Palm Peak. Soon she met many disciples along the way. When they saw Yun Chujio, they were all dumbfounded. Could it be that the teleportation array had been fixed? Hei Shinjio silently recorded the people who despised her in her black ledger. It was not too late for little Gio to take revenge. Just wait and see. Hei Shinjio followed the sect's map and finally arrived at the meeting hall halfway up the summit. On the way, this fellow had already heard that Sect Master Huang of Xuanji Sect, who was the closest to the Nameless Sword Sect, was here. No wonder Wan Pengcheng wanted to catch worryless fish. He must have used it to entertain Sect Master Huang. Yun Chujio blinked her eyes. Her ultimate goal was to unite all the powers to deal with the 9 pavilions, so it was not bad to be able to brush her face in front of Sect Master Huang. This fellow's thoughts were pretty good, but unfortunately he was stopped by the disciple on duty at the main entrance of the meeting hall. Stop. You are not allowed to enter the meeting hall without permission. Leave quickly. Yun Chujio was about to explain a few words when she saw Wan Pengcheng and the other 2 with sweat all over their heads. They ran over in panic. The 3 of them were stunned when they saw Yun Chujio, but they did not say anything. Instead, they said to the disciple on duty, "We have something urgent to report to the sect master. Quickly let us in." The disciple on duty did not let them in immediately. The leading disciple picked up his identity jade token and asked for instructions before letting Wan Pengcheng and the other 2 in. Yun Chujio, this shameless fellow, also followed them in. The disciple on duty quickly chased after them. However, because there were important guests in the meeting hall, they did not dare to make a big fuss. They watched Hei Shinjio follow Wan Pengcheng and the other 2 into the meeting hall. The disciple on duty gritted his teeth in anger. This Yun Chujio was too hateful. He quickly took out his identity jade token and reported it to Elder Gu, who was in charge. Unexpectedly, Elder Gu did not say anything and just told them to ignore it. After Yun Chujio followed Wan Pengcheng and the other 2 into the meeting hall, she could not help but click her tongue. This meeting hall was really grand. The higher-ups of the Nameless Sword Sect were all present, and there were a few people sitting on the guest seats. They must be from the Xuanji Sect. Yun Chujio was secretly sizing them up when she heard Wan Pengcheng and the other 2 say in a trembling voice, reporting to sect leader, worryless fish are all gone. Master Ouyang was initially in a daze when he saw Yun Chujio. When he heard the words of Wan Pengcheng and the other 2, he immediately ignored Yun Chujio and frowned slightly. What did you say? 1 pavilion, 2 islands, and 3 sects had always been competing with each other in the open and in the dark. Therefore, when Sect Master Huang came to visit, Master Ouyang originally wanted to catch a few worryless fish to show off. After all, only the Nameless Sword Sect had worryless fish in this towering sky continent. He didn't expect to hear the news that the worryless fish had disappeared. This time he didn't show off and it was embarrassing. Wan Pengcheng and the other 2 saw that Master Ouyang's expression was unhappy, and their legs went weak as they knelt on the ground. Sect Master, we were ordered to catch worryless fish, but we didn't expect to find no worryless fish at the end of the underground river. We checked carefully, and there were no signs of man-made damage to the 5 protective nets and array formations. We really don't know what caused this. Although Master Ouyang was shocked and angry with outsiders present, he naturally wouldn't flare up. He only glanced at Elder Wan, who wasn't looking too good either. Elder Wan, worryless fish has always been in your charge. Immediately arrange for people to thoroughly investigate this matter. When Eating Melon 9 heard Master Ouyang's words, her heart was practically blooming with joy. She didn't expect that worryless fish was in Elder Wan's charge. She had unintentionally tricked him. It was really great. Sect Master Ouyang glanced at Sect Master Huang and the others from Xuanji Sect, who looked like they were watching a good show. He was very angry. How did this worryless fish suddenly disappear? What the hell? Sect Master Huang took a sip of his tea and said with a faint smile, Sect Master Ouyang, you don't have to take it to heart. This worryless fish was born and bred. Perhaps it feels that the Nameless Sword Sect isn't suitable for it. It's hard to say if it's in another place. Sect Master Ouyang naturally heard that Sect Master Huang was taunting the Nameless Sword Sect and wanted to say a few words against him. However, the reason for the disappearance of the worryless fish had not been found yet, so it was useless to say anything more. just as Sect Master Ouyang was fuming with anger. Sect Master Huang changed the topic. That little girl is Yun Chujio, right? Didn't you say that she was trapped in the cave abode of the nameless patriarch? Isn't this out of the blue? Even if you don't want me to see her, you shouldn't be so perfunctory with me, right? Only then did Sect Master Ouyang remember Yun Chujio's matter. When he saw Yun Chujio's smiling face, Sect Master Ouyang felt his head ache. Ever since Yun Chujio entered the sect, the Nameless Sword sect had never stopped. Putting aside the fact that she had beaten people up and struck the sky-shaking drum, just the fact that half of the sword light in the sword pool was gone was already enough to make people worried. Not only that, the sword pool had been struck by lightning previously. Even the teleportation array in the Nameless Ancestral Master's Grotto had been destroyed by lightning. And now, Worryless Fish had also disappeared. Could it be that this little girl was a jinx? Was it all because of her bad luck? When Master Ouyang thought of this, he looked at Yun Chujio with a hint of disdain in his eyes. He thought to himself, since Xuanji sect had designs on her, he might as well ask for some benefits and send this jinx away. Heishinjio was so smart. Instantly, from the subtle changes in Master Ouyang's expression, he could guess what he was thinking. He thought to himself, little fellow, he'll make you cry and beg me to stay. After a few thoughts passed through Master Ouyang's mind, he said indifferently, the destruction of the teleportation array is indeed true. I'm also a little puzzled. Yun Chujio, how did you leave the Ancestral Master's cave abode? Yun Chujio blinked her eyes and deliberately glanced at Sect Master Huang. Then she said mysteriously, Sect Master Huang, should I say it now? Pandian 0ve1c Yun Chujio. She really wanted old man Ouyang to open his old eyes and take a good look. She was the magnificent female emperor of Zephyr, a petty person? Was she blind? This fellow's heart was filled with hatred. Alright, this is what you asked me to say. There are things you will regret. Sect Master, it was Patriarch Nameless who sent me out. Yun Chujio's words instantly stunned everyone. For a moment, the meeting hall was completely silent, as if time had frozen. What did she mean by Patriarch Nameless sending her out? The Nameless Patriarch had passed away tens of thousands of years ago, alright? How could he possibly send her out? Master Ouyang was already very angry about the Worryless Fish matter. Now that he heard Yun Chujio spouting nonsense, he immediately berated her coldly, nonsense. Why don't you tell me the truth? Yun Chujio said with an innocent expression, it's really like that. Why don't you ask the disciple in charge of repairing the teleportation array? The teleportation array hasn't been repaired up until now. If it wasn't for the Nameless Patriarch's appearance, how could I have come out? Although Master Ouyang still didn't quite believe it, he still had people ask. He didn't expect that the teleportation array hadn't been repaired yet, and Yun Chujio had indeed appeared on the teleportation platform out of thin air. Everyone couldn't help but feel a little nervous. Could it really be that the Nameless Master had appeared? Master Ouyang couldn't help but regret letting Yun Chujio say this matter in front of Sect Master Huang. However, since she had already said it, there was no need to hide it. Moreover, this matter might not be true. Thus, Master Ouyang said with doubt, Yun Chujio, tell me what exactly happened. Master Ouyang, the matter is like this. After I was left alone in the Ancestral Master's cave abode, I couldn't be more miserable. The people of the Discipline Hall didn't leave me a drop of water or a grain of food, and my spiritual power couldn't be used. I almost starved to death. I did summon my spiritual pet earlier. In the face of the dilemma between survival and eating my spiritual pet, I struggled for 3 whole days, but in the end I still couldn't bear to eat it. I was so hungry at that time. When I saw the stones I thought they were ribs, and when I saw the floating clouds I thought they were big steamed buns. I really couldn't believe that I, a dignified disciple of the Nameless Sword sect, would starve to death. When Yun Chujio said this, her face revealed an aggrieved and sad expression. She was just like a little white lotus. Sect Master Huang immediately felt that there were some things that could be done. He immediately looked at Master Ouyang in puzzlement. Master Ouyang, your Nameless Sword sect is too ruthless towards your own disciples. You don't even give them food and drink? Are you trying to starve your disciples to death? Master Ouyang's face alternated between red and white. He had only found out these few days that the Discipline Hall did not leave any food and water for Yun Chujio. He knew that this was most likely Elder Wan's handiwork. However, he felt that Yun Chujio was doomed anyway. There was no need for her to shed all pretense of cordiality with Elder One, so he did not flare up. Master Ouyang coughed twice. I will find out what the discipline hall has done to you. Continue. Yun Chujio wiped her tears with her sleeve and sighed. Sigh. Master Ouyang, it's up to you whether you want to find out or not. Anyway, it's not that bad this time. Master Ouyang's expression became even more unsightly. He didn't say anything, but he glared fiercely at Yun Chujio, clearly warning her to stop. Yun Chujio trembled for a moment and continued, forget it, forget it. I'm just a small handyman, naturally I can't compare to some people. Just treat it as my bad luck. However, this could also be considered a stroke of luck. I didn't expect that by a stroke of luck, I actually received the Patriarch's advice. This is simply a blessing in disguise. As Yun Chujio said this, her face revealed a smug expression. She was simply extremely smug. You received the Patriarch's advice? Just you? Aren't you afraid that the wind will blow your tongue out? Wan Pengcheng was already very angry. Seeing that Yun Chujio kept pointing at the mulberry trees and scolding the locust trees, he couldn't bear it anymore and mocked. Yun Chujio glanced at Wan Pengcheng and then said to Master Ouyang, Master Ouyang, since senior brother Wan suspects me, why don't you let me compete with him in swordsmanship? Master Ouyang saw that Yun Chujio had a nose and eyes, so he thought that it would be okay for her to compete with Wan Pengcheng. Whether she had received the advice of the Patriarch, he could see it with his eyesight. Thus Master Ouyang nodded and agreed. However, he allowed the two of them to stop and not to use their spiritual power. Wan Pengcheng had long wanted to seek revenge on Yun Chujio. Back then he had been schemed against by this stinky girl with chili flour. Today he would definitely teach her a lesson. Wan Pengcheng immediately summoned his treasured sword. This cold light sword of his was personally forged by Elder Duanmu of the upper house of the Nameless Sword sect. A few days ago, Elder Wan had painstakingly asked for it to be given to Wan Pengcheng. Everyone could not help but exclaim in surprise when they saw the sword. With this sword, Wan Pengcheng was like a tiger with wings. Yun Chujio was probably going to lose miserably. Everyone turned their gazes to Yun Chujio. They heard that this Yun Chujio had a large kitchen knife. She wouldn't really use a large kitchen knife to fight, right? At this moment, Yun Chujio took out a tree branch from her storage ring and said lazily to Wan Pengcheng, come on. To deal with someone like you, there's no need for a sword. The tree branch is enough. Everyone, this Yun Chujio was too arrogant. The tree branch was enough? Just wait for your defeat. Wan Pengcheng was so angry that he gritted his teeth. This Yun Chujio was really too infuriating. Immediately, Wan Pengcheng did not say anything and raised the treasured sword in his hand to stab at Yun Chujio. The sword technique he used was the 7-star sword technique, that only the Nameless Sword sect's inner court disciples could practice. Yun Chujio dodged nimbly, and the tree branch in her hand stabbed towards Wan Pengcheng's eyes. Everyone recognized the sword technique that Yun Chujio used. It was the 5-element sword technique that was commonly practiced by outer disciples. Although everyone was surprised that a handyman like Yun Chujio knew the 5-element sword technique, the 5-element sword technique was too flashy and was far inferior to the 7-star sword technique. This Yun Chujio would definitely lose. However, after a few rounds, everyone revealed shocked expressions. Yun Chujio actually had the upper hand. How was this possible? What surprised everyone even more was that not only was Yun Chujio's sword technique inferior to Wan Pengcheng's, but the sword in her hand was only a branch. And the sword in Wan Pengcheng's hand was the cold light sword. What did this mean? This meant that Yun Chujio's sword technique attainment was not just a little bit higher than Wan Pengcheng's. Everyone looked at Yun Chujio's every move and moved carefully. Although all the moves in the 5-element sword technique were the same, what was different about them? Although it was only a slight change, it was just a small change that made the originally flashy 5-element sword technique become fierce. Wan Pengcheng, who was holding the cold light sword with a tree branch, was forced to retreat repeatedly. Pan DN0V1's and Wan Pengcheng's forehead was full of cold sweat, and he was both angry and anxious. He had originally thought that he would be able to avenge himself, but who would have thought that Yun Chujio would use a broken tree branch to force him to be unable to parry? If this were to be spread out, he would simply become the laughingstock of everyone. Wan Pengcheng saw the faint smile on Yun Chujio's face again, and he was flustered and exasperated as he circulated his spirit energy. The tip of the cold light sword instantly transformed into dozens of swords, and each of them stabbed towards the fatal spots on Yun Chujia's body. All of this happened in a split second. The place where Yun Chujio and Wan Pengcheng were fighting was near the entrance of the meeting hall. Even the people closest to them didn't have the time to stop them. A thought flashed through Master Ouyang's mind. It's over. Yun Chujio was dead for sure. The move that Wan Pengcheng used wasn't the 7-star sword technique, but the space-shattering sword technique that only true disciples could practice. And this move was the most powerful killing move of the space-shattering sword technique. Meteor. By right, Wan Pengcheng wasn't a true disciple, so he shouldn't know this space-shattering sword technique. Presumably, it was something that Elder Wan taught him in private. Now that he used this move and poured in his spiritual power, Yun Chujio was only at the 9th level of the spirit transformation realm, so there was no way for her to dodge it. She was dead for sure. Elder Wan's expression wasn't too good either. He had privately taught Wan Pengcheng the space-shattering sword technique for him to use to protect his life. He didn't expect that he would actually use it today. It was a small matter for him to be criticized by others. What made him worried was that Wan Pengcheng's spiritual power and sword cultivation were not enough to support him in using the falling star technique. Even if he could kill Yun Chujio, he would suffer a backlash. He was too impulsive. Just when everyone thought that Yun Chujio was doomed to die, a sudden change occurred. The tree branch in Yun Chujio's hand was lifted at an extremely tricky angle. Not only did it break the falling star technique, but everyone was also stunned to see the cold light sword in Wan Pengcheng's hand fly out of his hand. While Wan Pengcheng was still in a daze, the tree branch in Yun Chujio's hand slapped his face several times until the tree branch in her hand was broken. Only then did she throw the remaining half of the tree branch in her hand onto Wan Pengcheng's face. Wan Pengcheng was embarrassed and angry. In addition to the backlash from Starfall, he spat out a mouthful of blood and fainted on the ground. Yun Chujio curled her lips. You still can't beat me when you're playing tricks. What a waste of food. Elder Wan quickly fed Wan Pengcheng a pill. His gaze was cold as he glanced at Yun Chujio, but he didn't say anything. What could he say? With so many people watching, not only was Wan Pengcheng a waste of food, he was also unreasonable. Even if he said it, he would only be asking for trouble. There would be plenty of time in the future to kill this smelly girl. Master Ouyang and the others looked at Yun Chujio in surprise. At this time they already believed 90% of what Yun Chujio said. Not to mention other things, just the sword technique that broke the falling star was very mysterious. Just a little girl like her couldn't figure it out at all. She must have been taught by an expert. Master Ouyang changed his previous disdain and said in a gentle tone, Yun Chujio, your sword technique has indeed improved a lot. Can you tell me specifically how the patriarch taught you? Master Ouyang, I was thirsty and hungry at that time and directly fainted. My poor little dog also fainted from hunger with me. Just when I thought I was dead, I was awakened by the rumbling thunder. Everyone nodded their heads repeatedly when they heard this. The heavenly thunder indeed happened 3 days after Yun Chujio arrived at the nameless ancestral master's cave abode. All of them stretched their necks to listen to Yun Chujio continue. At that time I opened my eyes weakly. Then I saw many colorful mushrooms growing on the originally empty cliff wall. At that time I was starving to death. I didn't care whether it was poisonous or not. In any case, I ate a few mushrooms at once. My little dog also ate a few mushrooms. Then I saw the nameless ancestral master, but I couldn't see his face clearly. He was holding a tree branch in his hand, and his movements were very slow as he made 3 sword moves. When everyone heard this, they all looked at each other in dismay. What ancestral master appeared? Was this guy poisoned from eating poisonous mushrooms? The so-called ancestral master teaching her sword techniques was just an illusion. Master Ouyang obviously had the same thoughts as everyone else. He coughed twice and said, Then demonstrate the 3 sword techniques that the ancestral master taught you. Yun Chujio didn't hesitate. She immediately took out a tree branch and demonstrated the 3 sword techniques. This fellow was very smart. The 3 sword techniques she demonstrated were all carefully chosen by her. Other than the one that was used to break the falling stars, the other 2 techniques contained the shadow of the moves that Master Ouyang had previously used. This way it would be easier for everyone to connect the dots. As expected, after everyone saw Yun Chujio's 3 sword techniques, they had a rough guess in their hearts. Although these 3 sword techniques were very exquisite, They were very similar to the signature sword technique of the Nameless Sword sect, the Nameless Sword technique. It was most likely that this little girl had imagined them after the competition with Master Ouyang. This wasn't without precedent. For example, some sword techniques were only thought up when one was drunk. It was inevitable that she had created 3 new sword techniques by accident after eating the poisonous mushrooms. However, there was a problem. How did she come out of the Nameless Ancestral Master's cave abode? Yun Chujio, how did you come out of the Ancestral Master's cave abode? Master Ouyang asked. Sai, don't mention it. Buttface and I ate all the mushrooms that appeared after the thunder last time. We were so hungry that we could only lie on the spot where the teleportation array originally appeared and wait for death. However, I don't know how I was teleported out. The Ancestral Master must have pitied me for being harmed by a treacherous person at such a young age, so he manifested his spirit and teleported me out. Buttface? The corners of everyone's eyes twitched. What kind of name did Yun Chujio give her spiritual pet? However, according to what she said, it was not impossible. The teleportation array was damaged by the heavenly lightning, so it might not be stable. Coincidentally, when she was lying on it, she accidentally triggered the teleportation array, so she was teleported out. After much discussion, they came to a conclusion based on the truth that Yun Chujio told them. Yun Chujio was poisoned by mushrooms and had hallucinations. In the end, she was lucky enough to activate the teleportation array, therefore she came out unharmed. Everyone did not believe that the Ancestral Master had appeared. After all, how could the Nameless Ancestral Master suddenly appear after so many years? Moreover, even if he did appear, he should not have chosen this little girl who had just entered the sect for more than a month. Where would they put their face? The crowd asked about the characteristics of the mushroom again. Yun Chujio rambled on without thinking. Naturally, the crowd could not determine the species of the mushroom. They could only wait for the teleportation array to be repaired before going up to take a look. Yun Chujio was not afraid of the crowd looking. Anyway, she said that she had eaten all of it. What could they see? This fellow originally wanted to make up a story about the patriarch showing up to teach her swordsmanship, but after thinking about it, she felt that it was not very safe, so she temporarily changed it to the poisonous mushroom version. Because her spiritual power was currently low, if everyone believed that the patriarch had taught her swordsmanship, it was hard to guarantee that everyone would think that she was hiding it and did not reveal all of her sword moves. At that time, it would be difficult to deal with the crime of possessing a treasure. Seeing that the matter had come to light, Master Ouyang comforted Yun Chujio a few times. The disgust in his heart also faded a little. After all, this little girl was able to think of exquisite sword moves even after eating a poisonous mushroom. She was indeed a good seedling to practice swordsmanship. He should stay and observe her. PN0V1 Comsec Master Huang was in a good mood after watching a good show, so he smiled and said, "There's no need to be so formal. I came here to see the rumored female Emperor of Zephyr. Now that I've seen her, she is indeed a smart and good child. It's just a pity. If only you had joined Xuanji sect back then. I wouldn't have let you be a handyman no matter what." Master Ouyang's expression darkened slightly as he stared intently at Yun Chujio, wanting to hear her answer. The little girl smiled and said in a clear voice, "Thank you, Sect Master Huang, for your kindness. Xuanji sect and Nameless Sword sect are both great sects in the Towering Sky continent. It's my honor to be able to become a disciple of any sect. Actually, there's nothing wrong with becoming a servant. Only through suffering can one rise to the top. I'm still young and more suffering will be beneficial to my future growth." Yun Chujio's words immediately stunned everyone. Her words were very smooth and no one could find anything wrong with them. This little girl was really eloquent. No wonder she became the Southern Continent's female Emperor of Zephyr in such a short period of time. She was indeed outstanding. Sect Master Huang was stunned for a moment, then he said a few words of encouragement. With his status, he wouldn't make things difficult for a little girl. He was only here to test Master Ouyang's motive for keeping Yun Chujio. Now that he saw that Yun Chujio didn't seem to be having an easy time in the Nameless Sword sect, his original guess was somewhat shaken. He was prepared to let his spies continue to keep an eye on her, and it wouldn't be too late to make a move once he had a clue. Seeing that there was nothing for Yun Chujio here, Master Ouyang waved his hand and said, "Yun Chujio, you can leave first." Yun Chujio nodded obediently and left the meeting hall, returning to the Forging Sword Hall number 9. Hall Master Zhuge and the others were very happy to see Yun Chujio back, but Yun Chujio noticed that the 5 of them were a little absent-minded, as if something was on their minds. Before Yun Chujio could ask what had happened, there was a knock on the door. Zhuge Dong opened the door and saw a servant standing outside the door in fear and trepidation. Yun, junior sister Yun, in order to celebrate you clearing your name, our canteen has cooked a few of your favorite dishes for you. Please accept them, the servant said with fear and trepidation. Ever since Yun Chujio was locked up, although the canteen of the lower house did not treat number 9 sword forging hall as harshly as before, they no longer sent them meals. It was always Zhuge Dong who went to fetch the meals every few days. However, the people from the canteen heard that not only did that fiend not die, he even returned alive. What was worse was that they heard that after eating a few poisonous mushrooms, he created 3 mysterious sword techniques and beat Elder Wan's grandson until he vomited blood. Oh God, if she knew that they didn't send food to the number 9 sword forging hall at this stage, she would definitely do something evil. Therefore, a few chefs used their best skills and hurriedly cooked dozens of dishes and had the odd job workers send them over. Yun Chujio had a stomach full of tricks and immediately guessed it. She sneered and said, "What? Did your canteen think that I wouldn't be able to come back? Is that why you have been treating our number 9 sword forging hall so slowly?" The servant's legs suddenly turned weak and he said with a trembling voice, "Junior sister Yun, I'm just a servant. I don't know anything." Fortunately, Zhuge Dong was kind enough to help her explain, "Junior sister Yun, although the canteen didn't send us food, they didn't make things difficult for us. You don't have to scare them." Yun Chujio snorted coldly, "For the sake of senior brother Dong, I'll spare you. And next time I'll burn down your canteen. Also, remember Yun Chujio am very tough. I won't die." Zhuge Bei looked at the back of that handyman and couldn't help but laugh. "Junior sister Yun, I really don't understand. Why are they so afraid of you?" Yun Chujio shrugged. "Who knows? It's probably because I'm good-looking." East, West, South and North couldn't help but laugh. Zhuge Dong somewhat understood the thoughts of those people. Those people bullied the weak and feared the strong. However, junior sister Yun was an unafraid person, so those people naturally didn't dare to resist. Anyway, just delivering some food didn't mean anything. Yun Chujio had been craving for food these days. Although she had eaten a few grilled fish before, she was hungry after all this, so she ate lunch with Dong, Nan, 11 and Bei. After lunch, Yun Chujio found an opportunity to ask Zhuge Bei in a low voice, "Senior brother Bei, what happened? Why do I feel that something is on your mind?" Zhuge Bei was someone who could not keep his mouth shut. He lowered his voice and said, "Don't mention it." Didn't the sword light in the sword pool decrease by half? That's why the sword pool increased the number of missions for the Forging Sword Hall. The other Forging Sword Hall has more people than us, so they can naturally complete it. Our Forging Sword Hall only has 6 people. How can we complete it? Moreover, this time the people from the sword pool said that if we can't complete the mission, we'll ask the hall master to leave the number 9 sword forging hall with us, and find someone else to take over the number 9 sword forging hall. Leave the number 9 sword forging hall? Then where will you go? Where can we go? Of course, we'll just be ordinary disciples. The 4 of us are easy to deal with, but the hall master is a sword forging master. Letting him leave the sword forging hall is like taking his life. Sigh. Zhuge Bei sighed heavily. Hearing Zhuge Bei's words, Yun Chujio couldn't help but frown. To be honest, she was the cause of all this. If it weren't for the fact that the kitchen knife had secretly eaten half of the sword light, the sword pool wouldn't have thought of such an idea to make things difficult for Hall Master Zhuge. Of course, even if there wasn't the matter of the sword light, the sword pool would still make things difficult for Hall Master Zhuge. The matter of the sword light was just a primer. Even so, Yun Chujio still felt that she had the responsibility to resolve this matter. She did not want to implicate Hall Master Zhuge and the East, West and North because of her. The treatment of a sword forging hall disciple was much better than that of an ordinary outer sect disciple. Although Zhuge Bei said it was easy, he would definitely not be willing to leave. Yun Chujio spoke a few more words with Zhuge Bei, then went to the storeroom to clean the forged treasured swords. As she cleaned the swords, she pondered. If she were to refine pills or talismans, she might be able to help. However, she knew nothing about forging swords, so she couldn't help even if she wanted to. Yun Chujio thought for a moment before putting down the swords in her hands and heading to the front yard. She wanted to see how the forging process went. Unexpectedly, Hall Master Zhuge said with an extremely displeased expression, "Yun Chujio, I said that when the sword forging is done, women can't be present. Have you forgotten? Hurry up and go back to the backyard." Yun Chujio was holding her breath. Originally she had good intentions and wanted to help, but she didn't expect to be lectured by this stinking rock. She was too lazy to talk nonsense with Hall Master Zhuge, so she returned to the backyard in a huff. Buttface, who had already seen the light, was running wildly in the backyard. When he saw Yun Chujio's angry look, he eagerly approached her and asked what was going on. After hearing Yun Chujio's words, Buttface mysteriously said with his spiritual sense, "Little fairy, I have a good idea. Didn't that stinky rock say that he can't successfully forge the sword because there are women present? Then go to the other sword forging halls and make them unable to successfully forge the sword. Let's see how the sword pool punishes Stinky Rock and the others." Yun Chujio, this Buttface was really bad. However, this was nonsense. She didn't believe that she couldn't succeed with a woman present. However, it was also possible to go to the other sword forging halls and see where the gap was. Therefore, He Xingjiu found an excuse to leave the number 9 sword forging hall and strolled to the number 8 sword forging hall, which was the closest. Pan DN0V1 from Yun Chujio straightened her back. "You've heard about my creation of sword moves, haven't you? The sect master has given me special privileges and I can visit all the sword forging halls to increase my inspiration. Why don't you get out of the way?" That disciple had heard about Yun Chujio eating poisonous mushrooms to develop 3 sword moves. After being frightened by Yun Chujio, he subconsciously moved aside. Yun Chujio swaggered into the number 8 sword forging hall. In the middle of the courtyard, there was a blackened furnace that was as black as the number 9 sword forging hall. 8 strong and stocky disciples were swinging special hammers to smash 2 red-hot sword billets. Beside them stood an old man with a goatee, Shan Yanghu. Yun Chujio could not help but blink her eyes. It was just as Zhuge Bei had said. There were a few more people than the number 9 sword forging hall. The production rate was naturally higher than theirs. Shan Yanghu's expression immediately darkened when he saw Yun Chujio. Who let her in? Don't you know that women are not allowed to be present during sword forging? Hurry up and chase her away. Yun Chujio was both angry and curious. Why did these guys from the nameless sword sect reject women so much when they were forging swords? Was there something wrong with them? Therefore, when the disciple who opened the door for her came to chase her away, she laughed lightly. Who said that women cannot be present when forging swords? If your sword forging skills are not good, why are you still blaming women? There's really no place to blame. Shan Yanghu was so angry that his beard was raised. He said angrily out of embarrassment, "Outrageous. Really outrageous. A woman is dirty and unclean, and the god of swords doesn't like it. Once a woman is present, even if the sword forging is successful, the quality will be very low." Yun Chujio was stunned by Shan Yanghu's words. Shan Yanghu saw Yun Chujio's stunned look and sneered a few times, indicating for his disciples to drag Yun Chujio out. Just as the disciple was about to drag Yun Chujio out, Yun Chujio sneered and said, "A woman is dirty and unclean? Then may I ask who gave birth to the incomparably holy you? Could it be that you were born by a man? When you said that a woman is dirty and unclean, you even scolded your own mother and sisters. You are really as holy as a white lotus." Shan Yanghu's face immediately turned red as he pointed at Yun Chujio and said, You are simply spouting nonsense. This is a rule passed down from ancient times. How can you interfere? Get out of here." Yun Chujio sneered, "I don't want to stay in your dirty place." "Bah! What the hell is this?" After saying that, Yun Chujio turned around and left the number 8 sword forging hall. However, before she left, she blew up the gate of the number 8 sword forging hall. Shan Yanghu and the others were scared silly. Looking at the debris on the ground, Shan Yanghu was almost angered to death. Trembling, he took out his voice transmission talisman and complained to the discipline hall. This Yun Chujio was simply going to rebel. Yun Chujio's heart was very stifled. It was as if there was a ball of burning flames. Even if the gate of the number 8 sword forging hall was blown up, it was still unable to dispel the anger in her heart. What nonsense was this dirty and unclean? In the end, it was still discrimination against women. Even in a world like Atlas Continent, where the strong were respected, there was still contempt for women. Moreover, it was obvious that compared to the southern continent, the northern continent situation was more serious. In the past few days she had long discovered that although the Nameless Sword sect had quite a number of female disciples, most of them were outer sect disciples or odd job workers. Some of them were even the concubines of the sect's elders. The number 7 sword forging hall also had a few more people than the number 9 sword forging hall. Before she could say anything, the hall master of the number 7 sword forging hall roared and ordered people to kick her out. Get rid of her. Get rid of her. How can you let a woman enter the sword forging hall? What bad luck. Yun Chujio did not waste time talking to him and turned around to leave happily. However, before she left, she also blew up the door of the number 7 sword forging hall. Hei Shinjio did not care how the people of the number 7 sword forging hall scolded her. She turned around and arrived at the number 6 sword forging hall. Soon, except for the number 9 sword forging hall, the 8 doors of the lower house were all blown up by Hei Shinjio. The 8 hall masters of the sword forging hall nearly fainted from anger. They all complained to the discipline hall and demanded that Yun Chujio, the culprit, be punished severely. Manager Song, who was on duty at the discipline hall, felt his head buzz when he heard that Yun Chujio was causing trouble again. The Nameless Sword sect had always been peaceful. Why did something keep happening recently? Moreover, it was all related to that Yun Chujio. This Yun Chujio had just entered the sect when she beat up the servants of the lower house's dining hall. Then she sounded the heaven-shaking drum. In the end, she even expelled Manager Fan and Manager Tion from the sect. Just now, the higher-ups of the sect had ordered the discipline hall to strictly investigate the 2 disciples who escorted Yun Chujio to the Nameless Patriarch's cave abode and the few disciples who were in charge of repairing the teleportation array. He was in a terrible situation, but now, this troublemaker had blown up the gate of the sword forging hall from number 1 to number 8 for no reason. Wasn't this a trick? Manager Song thought for a moment and did not immediately send people to capture Yun Chujio. He planned to go to the sword forging halls to understand the situation first so that Yun Chujio would not backstab him. After understanding the truth of the matter, it was not too late to capture Yun Chujio. On the other side, after Hei Shinjio blew up the 8 gates, she felt that the anger in her heart had dissipated a little. She could not be bothered to return to sword forging hall number 9 because she knew that Hall Master Zhuge must have heard about the commotion. When she went back, she would also be reprimanded by him. A large part of the reason why she was so angry today was because she recalled her previous life. Pan de N0 after she found this news, she did not continue to investigate further. What was the point of finding such parents? Because of their abandonment, she had been a little beggar since she was young. Every day she had only one task in life, and that was to fill her stomach. She had even fallen to the point of snatching food from dogs. Therefore, when she heard those sword forgers' prejudice and slander towards women today, she could no longer suppress the anger in her heart. So what if she was a woman? Was a woman inferior to others? Yun Chujio walked forward aimlessly. As she walked, her eyes became a little moist. She originally thought that the pain in her heart had been healed by time, but she did not expect that she would still be stimulated by a single sentence and bleed profusely. Perhaps her obsession with her parents had not been resolved. Otherwise, she would not be so persistent in trying to find her biological parents in this body. When Yun Chujio calmed down a little, she realized that she was standing at the door of a courtyard. There was no plaque on the door and there were no disciples guarding it. Yun Chujio took out a map and compared it. She found that the name and purpose of this courtyard were not marked on the map. She could not help but feel curious. She went forward and knocked on the door, but there was no response. Yun Chujio thought about it. It was already late, and she did not want to go back and see Hall Master Zhuge's ugly face. It was not bad to spend the night in this courtyard. Therefore Yun Chujio pushed open the door of the courtyard. Looking at the situation in the courtyard, Yun Chujio could not help but be stunned. This was also a sword forging hall? The reason why Yun Chujio had such a judgment was that there was a dark weapon forging furnace in the center of the courtyard. It looked exactly the same as the weapon forging furnace of the number 9 sword forging hall. However, there was no earth fire burning underneath. It seemed that no one had used it for many years. Yun Chujio frowned. She was annoyed whenever she saw the furnace. She didn't bother to look at it anymore and went straight to the backyard. The layout of the backyard was similar to the number 9 forging sword hall. Yun Chujio randomly picked a room and cleaned it briefly before lying on the bed. She recalled what happened today and knew that she had vented her anger. Moreover, she was too impulsive and couldn't avoid being punished. But she had done what she had to do. You're tuning in to the Han Lee's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.